It begins in 1861. I have just inherited the throne of the Netherlands. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 251 Bilateral Talks. Does His Majesty Charles XV suspect that the Latins and Slavs might join forces against us Germans? Christian IX asked suspiciously. It's not a possibility, but a certainty. The British Foreign Secretary Russell, who had always been calm, said firmly, the Slavs will not deal with the great Germans alone, and Napoleon III of France and Emmanuel II of Italy will not do so either. Therefore, what we will face next will be our Latin and Slavic people who are full of vigilance against us. Yes, no matter what the result of this meeting is, it has already made the Germans famous and increased the sense of identity of various countries, but it has also awakened the Latins and Slavs. Ladies and gentlemen, no matter what the relationship between our countries was before, at this moment, we must put aside some prejudices, otherwise, the final result will be that we will defeat them one by one. The Dutch Foreign Minister Huspert van continued with a very serious expression. In order to support the development of the Germans, we in the Netherlands propose that we take this opportunity to make the Summit of Leaders of German Countries an annual meeting, regularly held in Sweden. What do you think? Karl XV smiled, and Foreign Minister Ladwig was also cheered up. Russell's eyes froze when he heard this, and he looked at Queen Victoria next to him and saw the other's surprise. William I, who had been smiling all the time, suddenly froze, and hurriedly exchanged glances with Bismarck, who shook his head. Danish King Christian IX secretly nodded to Foreign Minister Maker. Maker hurriedly stated that Denmark agreed with Huspert van's proposal and agreed to continue holding the Germanic Summit in Sweden. Bismarck, who was standing next to William I, said, the Germanic Summit is indeed necessary, but if it is held in a fixed location, it will cause controversy among the people of various countries. As everyone knows, we Germans are a nation with a very strong sense of honor, and they also attach great importance to the international status of their respective countries. Therefore, in order to avoid opposition from various countries in the future and to better host the summit, I think it would be better to do this. The summit will be held every year, but the venue can be rotated. This will not only satisfy the citizens of each country, but also allow each country to better understand the national conditions of the host country and deepen their mutual feelings. Why not do it? Joseph I and his foreign minister Reichsberg hesitated, but when they thought that if the Austro-Hungarian Empire was in Sweden, a neutral country, they could feel more comfortable. If it was in Prussia, then the Austro-Hungarian Empire would. Now, Bismarck's proposal to hold the summit in turn by various countries is the most appropriate approach. Joseph I gave Reichsberg a dead look, and Reichsberg understood and said, Austria agrees to hold it in turns. Bismarck smiled at William IV and said, I think it's better to do this. It's good to hold it in turns. We can do this, but we should still establish a Germanic cultural headquarters in Sweden. After all, the Swedish-Norwegian United Kingdom is the birthplace of our Germans, the birthplace and growthplace of our Germans. Prime Minister Bismarck said this, and Karl XV finally smiled. William IV, who had been paying attention to Bismarck, saw this scene and sighed that he was worthy of being the top diplomat in Europe today. He really could win people's hearts. Queen Victoria and Minister Russell did not object. So, the annual system of the Germanic Summit was officially established. It was already afternoon when we went to this meeting. Today's meeting ended. Tomorrow will be the real highlight, because countries will hold bilateral and multilateral talks. On June 4, 1866, Queen Victoria of the United Kingdom held talks with William R. Russell, and Bismarck, who accompanied them, also participated in the whole process. After the talks, the two countries held a press conference on the talks. Russell, we, the British Empire, hope that the Kingdom of Prussia will continue to love peace. Britain has reasons to maintain friendly relations with Prussia, but Prussia must guarantee that the safety and wealth of those who have been naturalized in the Prussian-ruled territories will not be affected. William I and Prime Minister Bismarck have assured us that they will treat their citizens in this way, so Britain will achieve Prussia's current status in the German Confederation. Bismarck, thank you very much for the support of Minister Russell and Queen Victoria. We believe that the relationship between Britain and Prussia will definitely be better. Therefore, Prussia will purchase a number of large warships from Britain to consolidate Prussia's naval position and provide jobs for Britain. In addition to the Anglo-Prussian talks, Britain and Austria also held talks in the afternoon. After Queen Victoria met with Joseph I, the two announced that they would maintain close relations and increase cooperation in the Mediterranean. They did not mention the Anglo-Austrian-Italian alliance, which included Italy. Obviously, this made many people realize that the Germanic communism should be true, especially the four countries of France, Spain, Italy and Portugal in southern Europe and the Russian Empire of the Slavs, all of whom understood the changes. So they are also in close contact and are preparing to announce a public agreement in the near future to deal with the threat posed by the unity of the Germanic people. The Netherlands and Denmark-Sweden held a trilateral meeting. After the meeting between William IV, Karl XV and Christian IX, the three announced at a press conference that they were generally satisfied with the summary of the trilateral relationship. The position of dissatisfaction was that the speed should be faster. Therefore, the future will contribute to the future relationship between the three countries, continue to strengthen cooperation, and maintain the stability, development and prosperity of the three countries. Obviously, this team is surrounded by a powerful country, and the three countries warming together has produced some power. On June 5, the Netherlands will hold talks with Austria and Joseph I. The two countries announced to strengthen economic ties. At the same time, William IV also called on Joseph I to exchange talents between the two countries during the talks. William IV also had ambitions for Austrian talents. William IV also held the first public talks with Christian IX of Denmark. During the talks, William IV expressed his firm belief that Denmark's territorial integrity could not be challenged. The Netherlands would firmly support Denmark's current territorial borders and strongly and clearly oppose any country occupying even 1 square meter. The Netherlands would also oppose it. After the meeting, Denmark and the Netherlands signed the Atlantic and European Mutual Assistance Agreement between the two countries. In the agreement, Dutch warships can freely dock in ports in Denmark, Iceland and Greenland, and Danish warships can also dock in Amsterdam and Rotterdam. At the same time, the two countries signed a cultural alliance, which will start next year. The two countries will establish a new docking department called the Ministry of Culture, which will dock the cultural integration of the two countries and deepen the recognition of the two countries. William IV also held bilateral talks with Queen Victoria on the same day. During the talks, William IV asked for the marriage of 18-year-old Princess Louise for his younger brother, Crown Prince Frederick of Greece, who just turned 18 this year. To William IV's surprise, Queen Victoria actually agreed. The rest of the talks that followed went smoothly in the early stages. When the talks ended, William IV and Queen Victoria actually signed several agreements, in which the two countries would declare that they had common interests in maintaining the security of the North Atlantic. This was the injection requested by the Queen. And William IV asked the Queen to sign a document recognizing the Netherlands' sphere of influence in the South Pacific and supporting the Netherlands' position there. Chapter 252, South American Heads of State Meeting in Suriname. On June 6, 1866, the Germanic nations of Sweden, Denmark, the Netherlands, Britain, Prussia, and Austria held a press conference in Stockholm. They officially announced the establishment of the annual meeting of Germanic national members, which will be held every summer starting this year, and the venue will be held in various countries in turn. Next year's host country will be Denmark. It will be held in the capital Copenhagen. The 6 countries also announced that a Germanic National Foundation will be established to search for ancient German historical resources and promote the ancient heritage of the 6 countries. The 6 countries also announced that they will jointly maintain the safety of shipping in Northern Europe, the North Atlantic and the Baltic Sea, and that it is necessary to work closely in the Mediterranean and the Atlantic to resolve their disputes. Britain, Prussia, and Austria officially announced that they applied to William IV to join the International Court of Justice in The Hague, which was led by the Netherlands. After these news came out, it immediately triggered a huge effect. Because with the participation of these countries, the status of the International Court of Justice in The Hague, the Netherlands, has become more consolidated. At this time, the Kingdom of Siam, later Thailand, in the Far East announced its application to join the court, which really attracted the world's attention. After all, the Far East, a country that was not valued, was actually going to join an institution that the European powers were hesitant about. So many countries began to become interested in the Kingdom of Siam. It was okay if they didn't know much about it, but once they knew about it, they were all shocked. The Kingdom of Siam actually survived intact in the face of Britain almost encircling the south and west, France in the east, and the Qing dynasty in the north. This attracted more attention from countries in Europe and the United States. As the reasons were revealed, the king of the Kingdom of Siam actually made friends with Queen Victoria, corresponded with Napoleon III, and met with King William IV of the Netherlands in Jakarta, the largest city in the Dutch East Indies, and purchased Dutch arms and industrial products to maintain his own security. 8 million Siamese supported his rule, which made Britain and France very cautious, and the Netherlands also maintained many interests of the Kingdom of Siam. As more information was leaked, Siam was actually reported in newspapers in many European and American countries, attracting the attention of many Europeans and Americans. In short, the Stockholm Conference made the world calm on the surface, but undercurrents were turbulent, causing many people to worry about the future development of the world situation. While everyone in the world was paying attention to the German National Conference and the possible addition of new members to the International Court of Justice in The Hague, they did not realize that other things were also evolving, and the situation was not even less changed than the formation of the Germanic countries. At the same time, in the governor's palace in the capital of Paramaribo, the only overseas province of the Kingdom of the Netherlands in South America, Suriname province, the Dutch Prime Minister Thorbecke was meeting important guests. They included Argentine President Mitre, Ecuadorian President Moreno, Venezuelan President Torrero and Colombian President Mosquera. Venezuelan President Torrero was born in the city of Acarigua, Venezuela in 1779. In 1810, he participated in the War of Independence against Spanish rule. In 1817, he joined the Patriotic Army of Venezuelan Simon Bolívar, the anti-Spanish leader in South America. In 1821, he participated in the Battle of Carabobo, after which he was awarded the rank of Major General and was appointed the highest official in the Venezuelan region. In 1822, Venezuela was declared established and he became the first president. He became the second president in 1839. However, in 1849, he was persecuted by his opponents, so he fled overseas and eventually ended up in the Dutch East Indies. After being discovered by William IV, he began to support him, and eventually returned in 1859 and was re-elected president of Venezuela in 1861. The trajectories of Colombian President Mosquera and Ecuadorian President Moreno are not much different. Both of them were forced to step down many times due to domestic opposition, and eventually fled overseas. They were found and supported by the Dutch International Intelligence Agency, regained power, and thus established an extraordinary close relationship with the Netherlands. Speaking of which, this is the first time that the Netherlands has organized several countries together. Before, none of the countries knew that the other party had such a close relationship with the Netherlands, so they were all embarrassed when they first met. Among them, Thorbecke is the most honorable, because looking at the oval table of the speaker, Thorbecke is sitting in the middle of the opposite side, and on the right is Argentine President Mitre, and on the left is Venezuelan President Torrero. The second from the right is Colombian President Mosquera. The second from the left is Ecuadorian President Moreno. The West respects the right, so the status of the presidents sitting in this meeting in South America can be seen from the seating arrangement. Thorbecke looked at these South American presidents in front of him and sighed in his heart. If the world was exposed, these presidents were actually presidents of countries that the Netherlands had secretly befriended for many years, and many of them even came to power with the help of the Netherlands. I think it would be enough to shock many people in the world. Even Thorbecke still feels like he is in a dream until now, and it is still incredible. However, to be honest, the most innocent among them is Argentine President Mitre. Yes, Mitre, the powerful president of Argentina, is here today. He is here at the invitation of the powerful Dutch Prime Minister, Thorbecke. Of course, if William IV is not counted, then this is the case. The reason why everyone is here this time is because the Netherlands is distributing sweets here, that is, the Netherlands is prepared to lure most of them with benefits. In any case, after years of development, these countries have now become close partners of the Netherlands. Seeing that the presidents of Colombia, Venezuela, Ecuador and other countries are waiting for Thorbecke's speech, Mitre is somewhat envious of Thorbecke. Although the other party is only a subordinate of William IV, and is still the prime minister with only more than 3 years left in office, compared with himself, he is suppressed by the powerful William IV, and he can even amend the Argentine constitution to protect himself for his long-term rule. Although he has been in this position for a longer time, the other party's international status and weight are far beyond his comparison. Ladies and gentlemen, we are here today This shows that we all have a common goal, and I believe that everyone knows that our positions are similar. Here, thank you all very much for coming to our Dutch overseas province Suriname. President Miter, you speak first. Miter stood up and made a European gentleman's salute to everyone, said thank you, and finally sat down. Miter said, "Thank you very much for Prime Minister Thorbecke's warm hospitality. The food here is good." Of course, the Netherlands' full efforts to develop the economy here have also put pressure on our South American countries. Over the years, Suriname has become the most developed place in South America in just less than 10 years, with a population of more than 500,000, becoming a shopping paradise and a holy place for life in South America. I didn't believe it before, but after coming here this time, I am reluctant to leave. Several other presidents also showed a sense of longing for their hometown and laughed kindly. Miter got to the point and said seriously, "South America does not need war." This is the idea of our Argentine citizens and the foreign policy formulated by our government. Therefore, we are now facing the territorial disputes between Brazil and Paraguay and Uruguay. We feel very dangerous. We are afraid that a terrible war will happen in South America. Look at the Balkan Peninsula in Europe now, and look at the Prussian-Danish War and the Prussian-Austrian War. They are all devastating. Wars have displaced people and impoverished families. Therefore, I urge all colleagues to support Argentina's next position and maintain the peace and order in South America. Chapter 253 William IV teaches his wife how to play politics. Amsterdam, Netherlands. William IV and his wife Queen Alexandra sat facing each other. He was holding his son, Prince Albert, who had just turned 6 months old. "Your Majesty, will the establishment of the German National Organization have a major impact on the situation in Europe? Will the countries be dissatisfied with the Netherlands using this meeting to allow Britain, Prussia and Austria to join the International Court of Justice in The Hague? There is no saying in the Netherlands that the harem does not interfere in politics, otherwise William IV would not have pushed Queen Alexandra to the throne of the Secretary-General of the International Women's Organization. Influenced by the world of gender equality in the future, he has a very tolerant attitude towards women's participation in politics. When Queen Alexandra and William IV were Anderson's students, William IV knew that Alexandra was more interested in politics. It was William IV's attitude that made Alexandra occasionally express her doubts about international politics in front of William IV. And William IV almost always answered all her questions. People don't mind being used, they only mind not being taken seriously by others. William IV raised his head and glared at Albert, who actually dared to glare back at him, which made William IV frown. He said to his mother Alexandra, "Come to think of it, they wish the Netherlands would ask them for help." Queen Alexandra asked, "What do you mean?" William IV continued to tease Albert, and had a father-son confrontation with him, but he did not give a direct answer. In 1857, a Belgian student named Orr ran for a seat in the Brussels City Council. On the election day, he happened to meet a female neighbor who said she planned to vote for him. Although Orr did not make such a request to her, Orr was surprised to hear her confession, so he said, "I have lived across the street from you for 18 years. I have shoveled snow on your road in winter and cut weeds for you in summer. I don't think it is necessary to make such a request to you anymore." William IV said this, frowned and wiped the saliva from Prince Albert's mouth. Alexandra was listening attentively. She was a little dissatisfied when William IV suddenly stopped, but she stopped when she saw him wiping the saliva of his son Albert. She felt warm in her heart. Under the big tree in the royal courtyard with a clear sky, the family of 3 and their noble status were enviable. Seeing this, William IV smiled and continued, "The answer of the female neighbor at that time made Orr unforgettable for life." She said, "Orr, there is one thing you should understand, people like others to ask her for help." Alexandra was stunned. William IV smiled and said, "So, the more help you ask others for, the more supporters you have. Those who have poured their life's efforts and bank deposits into your destiny are reluctant to be too picky about you and make their efforts come to nothing, because they have already paid too much. As Machiavelli said, great undertakings are like great wars, as long as sacrifices are made, further sacrifices are needed." Queen Alexandra seemed to understand something after hearing this, but she couldn't touch it. William IV said, "The Netherlands has either an enemy or friend relationship with other Germanic countries such as Britain, Prussia and Austria. The request made by the Netherlands is actually a step for all countries to make basic trust investments in the Netherlands. The Netherlands only needs to establish and gradually consolidate the basic trust of all countries in the Netherlands. Then in the future, the Netherlands will slowly win more trust from all countries and let them increase their trust investment. In the end, they will find that any devastating blow to the Netherlands of 1,000 will cause them to lose 800 of their own. Under such a measure, in accordance with what Machiavelli said above, these countries will choose not to lose the investment they have made, but will increase their investment in the Netherlands. As for the international situation you mentioned, the international situation will never change drastically because of one thing, because without sufficient interests, this Germanic meeting seems to stir up the situation in Europe, and it is even possible that the East and the South will have regional forces divided with us, but in fact it is only for a few countries, not to mention that this is related to the Netherlands. What do you mean? Alexandra couldn't keep up with her husband's jumping thoughts. William IV, this Germanic conference has taken all these into account from the very beginning, for various situations that may arise, such as the evolution of the situation in the Mediterranean. Alexandra's eyes suddenly lit up, and she said, Britain. William IV showed a teachable expression, and explained, Britain is too powerful in the Mediterranean, and because France, Italy, Spain and other countries dare not provoke Britain, Britain has always occupied a dominant position in the eastern Mediterranean. In the west, after occupying Gibraltar and southern Spain, Britain can also enter and exit freely. Therefore, Britain actually does not have any expectations for the results of this conference. It does not want to express any real opposition to the dominance of the Latins in the Mediterranean. Alexandra looked at William IV with admiration, and revealed, but Britain never expected that their participation in the conference itself was a recognition of the purpose of national unity. In the eyes of Southern Europe, this is already a starting point for the fight against the Latins based on the Germanic nation. A handful of yellow mud on the crotch is either shit or shit. William IV nodded, but then shook his head and said, Actually, Alexandra, whether Britain will respond to the call for this meeting or not, they have been calculated. Alexandra looked puzzled. William IV said, Because, even if Britain does not come, it will face the isolation of the remaining 5 Germanic countries due to its disagreement with the Germanic identity. In the future, when there may be conflicts between the Slavs and the Latins, how will these 5 countries treat Britain? You can imagine it. Alexandra was silent after hearing this. Yes, Britain is in a dilemma. If it does not respond, it will lose the protection of the nation. Many people don't know that Britain is not united internally. The English are Germanic people who immigrated from Northern Europe hundreds or thousands of years ago. The population accounts for 75% of the entire UK population. The Scots, Welsh and Northern Ireland account for the remaining 25% of the population, and these are the natives. The Celts, Scotland and Wales are called Scots, and Ireland is called Irish. They are the same nation as the colony of the Principality of Ireland, which was occupied in the early 19th century. The Celts in these places were very dissatisfied with the English ruling the entire British Isles, but the English chose to divide and rule. They chose to appease Scotland and Wales, and were tough on Ireland, causing the Irish to starve to death. Fleeing from North America and the European continent has resulted in more than 4 million Irish immigrants to North America in just over 60 years from the beginning of this century to the present, while the native population is exactly 4 million, which is terrifying. This is also why the government of Irish-American President Andrew Jackson became increasingly hostile to Britain during his term from 1829 to 1837. William IV added, with the intelligence of Queen Victoria and Russell, they would naturally guess the consequence. But after participating, the consequences they faced also made them toss and turn and have difficulty falling asleep when they went back to bed. Chapter 254, South American Alliance headquartered in Suriname. The UK's participation in the German summit angered Italy, France and Spain, the 3 major countries in the Middle East. Because the UK used to focus on balanced diplomacy, with the establishment of the German national institution, the UK has fallen into a dilemma. Identity recognition and the actual offshore means of balancing the European continent have become a contradiction. France, Italy and Spain in the Mediterranean will definitely be wary of the UK, and the Ottoman Empire will no longer be as submissive and cooperative with the UK as before. Many people in London couldn't help but sigh that this meeting has brought British diplomacy into a dead end with 2 forks, making the first difficult choice in hundreds of years. At this time, the war in the Balkans seems to have no meaning to continue. London has already seen an overwhelming demand for the British government and army to quickly prepare to withdraw from the war and reduce British casualties. On June 10, 1866, 4 days after the German conference in Stockholm, Sweden, Paramaribo, the capital of the Dutch province of Suriname in South America, leaked a piece of information, which instantly attracted the attention of South America, and even Europe and North America turned their attention to Suriname. It turned out that under the chairmanship of Dutch Prime Minister Thorbecke, Argentine President Mitre, Ecuadorian President Merino, Venezuelan President Herrera, and Colombian President Mosquera, the second largest power in South America, officially announced the establishment of the South American Union in Suriname. The 5 countries established a South American Union Commission with its headquarters in Suriname. The Union Charter was established, mainly for political consultation. The 5 countries reached free trade, energy, transportation and port integration, formulated a common defense mutual assistance policy, and the Netherlands provided funds and technology to create a South American education center in Suriname, set up several Surinamese universities, taught advanced technology and industry to the other 4 countries, and safeguarded the interests of the members of the alliance in South America. The Charter points out that the 4 countries will strengthen political dialogue among member countries, focusing on economic, financial, social development, South American culture, South American food production and marketing, and energy and mineral development. The 5 countries will carry out integrated trade construction, with special notes that the Netherlands will provide various assistance to the economies of the 4 South American countries in the Charter. The establishment of this alliance has attracted the attention of various countries because it is the first time that a major country has formed an alliance team in South America, and it was introduced by Colombia, Venezuela and Argentina, the pioneer countries that opposed the Spanish colonies. If Brazil is the largest country in South America and Argentina is the second largest country, then Colombia and Venezuela will be the third largest force in South America. Moreover, even Brazil is worried about the union of these 2 countries. What's more, the other party is in an alliance with Argentina, and there is also the Netherlands and Ecuador who are mediating between them. This force covers the entire northern part of South America, and it is a threat to Brazil and other countries with Argentina in the south and north. Therefore, Peru, Bolivia, Chile and even Paraguay expressed serious concerns about the newly formed alliance after Brazil. To the west of Suriname are the British colonies of British Guinea and French Guiana to the east. Therefore, the British and French foreign ministries have expressed their dissatisfaction with the Netherlands' development of power in South America and demanded that the Netherlands must make the relationship between the 5 countries more transparent. Seemingly isolated, the Davis government of the Confederate States of America expressed dissatisfaction with the Netherlands' infiltration into South America. We still support Monroe's diplomacy as always, and demand that the Netherlands withdraw from South America and give South America more freedom. The Confederate States of America launched a war, and the attitude of the North attracted a lot of attention. Many people in Britain speculated that the Lincoln government should strongly oppose it, even more strongly than the South. After all, the North and the South are now competing for the legitimacy of the United States. The Monroe Doctrine can be said to be the essence of American diplomacy. It has continued American diplomacy for more than 40 years, so there is no reason for the North not to implement it. There are many people in France who think so. After all, France's infiltration into Mexico almost ushered in the United States troops. In the end, if it were not for the outbreak of the Civil War, France would not have to face the anger of the United States. Therefore, the political circles in Paris are also vicious. Ron speculated that the United States would definitely issue a severe warning to the Netherlands, and even send warships to Suriname to demonstrate, in order to express its attitude against the expansion of the Netherlands in South America. Even when they originally wanted to send troops to Brazil, the southern border of Suriname, to vent their dissatisfaction, they suppressed it because of Portugal's appeasement and did not want to be the first bird. Even in the Netherlands and the Far East, many people do not understand why the Dutch government has gone to such great lengths in South America, and openly forming an alliance in South America has caused many puzzles. After all, if you really count it, the Netherlands now has a territory as large as Australia. Although the fertile land in the eastern states is lacking, there is no problem for the owners to feed the more than 10 million Dutch people in the Far East. And the lowlands of the mainland are one of the most fertile planting areas in Western Europe. Therefore, the Netherlands is not short of food. In this case, why does the Dutch government still want to provoke trouble? Puzzled, Really puzzling, so many people have complaints about the government. On June 13, 1866, the much-anticipated Lincoln government seemed to be late, and stood up under the expectations of all parties. Secretary of State Seward unexpectedly expressed his willingness to cooperate with the Netherlands and strengthen relations with Colombia, Venezuela, Argentina and Ecuador. When these expressions appeared, the whole scene was almost crazy. When you are ready to eat, you find that there is no rice today, but only a bowl of vegetable soup. And it is the kind without salt and taste. Before I showed up at this meeting, our president had already sent our country's finance minister Washburn as the president's special envoy to the headquarters of the South American League in the Suriname province of the Netherlands to formally submit an application. Our United States of America is ready to join the South American League and become the 6th member state. Will this conflict with the policy of your former President Monroe? Although there are some differences, don't forget that the ideas of our presidents Monroe and Lincoln are not much different. They just expressed their views in their respective periods for the development of South America. The changes in the international situation around 40 or 50 years are definitely different. The original intention of the two presidents is to hope that the people of South America will live better and freer. We have read the alliance agreements between the Netherlands and Argentina, Colombia, Venezuela, and Ecuador, and we are not afraid of threats. On the contrary, we think that it coincides with the idea of President Monroe and President Lincoln to help South America. Therefore, the United States of America in the North has made a decision that everyone sees now. We have decided to support the Five-Power Covenant and are willing to become the 6th country of the alliance. Chapter 255 Internal Division of the South American Alliance. 1866, the United States of America applied to join the South American Union. Because Prime Minister Thorbecke and others were still in Suriname, the Argentine President Mitre mentioned it, and the leaders of the South American Union held an emergency meeting to discuss whether to accept the United States of America as the 6th member of the organization. Ladies and gentlemen, I didn't expect that in just 2 days, our South American Union has attracted the attention of the world, and even the North American giant, the United States of America, wants to join our organization. I think that in order to expand the influence of the South American Union to North America, we can accept the United States of America as our new colleague. The speaker was the Argentine President Mitre. Thorbecke's eyes condensed, and then returned to normal. He saw the eyes of Colombian President Mosquera and Ecuadorian President Moreno meet, and the left corner of Thorbecke's mouth slightly raised. Sure enough, Argentina has always been close to the United States in South America. The United States has a lot of investment in Argentina, and it is said that there are both North and South. At the beginning, Argentina also appealed to the Lincoln government and the Davis government to stop the American Civil War, and even prepared to make Buenos Aires, the capital of Argentina, the location of the American peace talks. Both the North and the South of the United States were tempted, but unfortunately, they were too confident and thought that they would be the winner, so they finally rejected Argentina's proposal, which made the war not stop until now. As a reliable partner and investment destination of the United States, Argentina also received the joy of increased investment due to the war in the United States, and because of the strategic instability, Mitre began to accept the Covenant of the Netherlands, which eventually led to the establishment of the South American Alliance. However, Mitre was unwilling to give up the United States as a partner. Now that he saw that the Northern Federal State unexpectedly applied to join the South American Alliance, Mitre was naturally happy. With the addition of a strong American federal state, Argentina will be able to rely on hedging when facing the Netherlands. Deep in Mitre's heart, from the beginning, although he agreed with Sarmiento's statement that cooperation with the Netherlands would be beneficial to Argentina's development and strength, Argentina's long-term ally, America, would also bring more benefits to Argentina. Perhaps compared to the Netherlands, Mitre believed in America more. Ecuador has always been led by Colombia, so when Ecuadorian President Moreno saw Mosquera's eyes, he blurted out an unhappy retort, "President Mitre, although everyone is very happy about America's application to join, it means that our organization's reputation has been established and it is also very appealing to our organization, but I think if we agree to the United States of America joining too quickly, will the impact not be very good? Oh, I would like to hear, how can it be bad to let the federal state join the South American Union?" Mitre sneered in dissatisfaction. But his mind was working quickly. Ecuador was Colombia's follower, which was known to the whole of South America. Now Marino was obviously against the United States of America joining. Seeing Mosquera's calm appearance, it was obvious that the two must have discussed it beforehand. So, Colombia also opposed the United States of America. What should we do? According to the Charter of the South American Union, the joining of new member states must be approved by all member states before it can be passed and take effect. There are 5 countries. Now Argentina, where he is, agrees, Ecuador and Colombia behind him oppose it, the Netherlands' position is unclear, and Venezuela should not oppose it, because President Herrera is said to have accepted a lot of investment from the Lincoln government. So it's 2-2, plus the Netherlands. This negotiation is stuck. Seeing that Mitre had changed color and showed his dissatisfaction on his face, Marino deliberately explained hypocritically, "You know, the civil war in North America is going on now. If we rashly choose to allow the Northern Federation to become our member, then if the South expresses dissatisfaction with this, what will happen then?" This Mitre was speechless for a while. Marino continued to be unreasonable. More than that, you have to know that the Confederacy of the South is supported by Britain. If we are not careful, Britain may be angry that we accept the Federation and punish us. Then we will really cry. After all, Britain was just shot and killed more than 10,000 British soldiers by the Northern American Federation in the Richmond War. At this point, Marino glanced at Venezuelan President Herrera and Thorbecke, and said with a reminder, "British Guinea is located in the east of Venezuela and the west of Suriname where we are now. It is said that there are more than 5,000 British troops there. What if we annoy the other side and these 5,000 people go crazy? Well, what I can tell President Marino is that they will never step into Suriname. I guarantee this with the reputation of the Dutch Prime Minister." Mitre was about to continue speaking, but was stunned by Thorbecke's words. Thorbecke stood up and warned seriously. Although Britain is powerful, it is not so powerful that it can engage in artillery diplomacy without scruples. After all, if it were so powerful, it would not have failed repeatedly in the United States, and the same is true in the Balkan Peninsula. Thorbecke said this, and his tone slowed down a little. He said to Marino and President Mosquera beside him, "I just want to say that although the Netherlands is very concerned about Britain's strength, it does not think that Britain will dare to take action against Dutch territory because of this." This is a kind of self-confidence, which shocked Marino and Mosquera and made them envious. Although they did not understand where the Dutch Prime Minister's confidence came from, it did not prevent them from having unprecedented confidence in the Netherlands. An ally who dared to point out that he was not afraid of Britain. What could be more reassuring to Colombia and Ecuador than this? Therefore, Mosquera and Marino chose to remain silent about the United States of America joining the alliance. However, the two were still puzzled. At this time, Prime Minister Thorbecke should have understood that Argentina was preparing to add new allies within the South American alliance, and the object of checks and balances was the Netherlands. The two originally estimated that Thorbecke would stand on their side and oppose the United States of America's accession to dilute the influence of the Netherlands, but now it seems that they were wrong. Thorbecke had other ideas, which made them curious, but they no longer opposed it. Mitre was also stunned, but then he was happy. With the disappearance of Ecuador and Colombia's opposition, Thorbecke unexpectedly helped him speak up and obviously did not oppose the United States of America's accession. Venezuelan President Herrera was famous for changing his mind according to the situation. This matter was settled. Thinking of the news that Lincoln's Treasury Secretary Walburn was visiting his residence, for a moment, he thought about asking for more benefits from the other party when they met again. Period. Chapter 256, Accepting America. 1866, after an emergency meeting of the South American League Committee, after meeting with Washburn, the Secretary of the Treasury of the United States of America, and listening to Washburn's attitude towards the South American League from the Lincoln government, the 5 member states of the Netherlands, Argentina, Venezuela, Colombia, and Ecuador were finally moved and accepted the United States of America as the 6th member state. However, the time for the United States of America to join the League was finally determined to start on August 1st. For a time, Brazil, Peru, Chile, Bolivia, and Paraguay in Central South America were in danger, because the South American League was not just as simple as the economy, but also had a mutual assistance treaty in the military. Suddenly, they and the European countries thought of a problem, that is, if the United States of America still fought with the South after August 1st, and Britain also joined the war, then would the alliance go to war with Britain face to face because of the treaty? Can the Netherlands withstand it? Many people doubted whether the Netherlands could break through the English Channel and the North Sea blockade between Britain and Iceland and enter North America. France and other southern European countries were even more sarcastic, wanting to see how the two countries would end up after the Germanic summit. However, Buckingham Palace soon responded. British successor Prime Minister Clayton, who was visiting southern Europe, held talks with Spanish Prime Minister Ramon Narvaez in Madrid, Spain on June 18, 1866. Isabella II held a welcoming ceremony to welcome his arrival. On June 20, he was received by Napoleon III in Paris, and asked Clayton to return to London to greet Queen Victoria. He then held bilateral talks with French Prime Minister Olivier. After that, he met with King Emmanuel II in Milan, Italy on June 22, and held talks with Italian Prime Minister Marco Minghetti. Finally, he arrived in Lisbon, Portugal on June 25 and held a bilateral meeting with Portuguese Prime Minister Barreto. Analysts pointed out that in the face of a rapidly changing international situation, the British Empire was eager to improve its relations with its allies and partners in southern Europe in order to gain understanding and support on issues of vital interest to Britain, such as the conflict between the North and South of North America, the Balkan Peninsula War, the South American Alliance, and African colonies. However, it would be difficult to achieve these goals through this visit alone. British Prime Minister Clayton's talks in southern Europe have achieved limited results. This title was used in the European Times on June 26, 1866, attracting a lot of attention. According to the most influential Luxembourg newspaper in Europe and the United States, Clayton and the four southern European countries discussed in their memories the development of the situation in the Balkan Peninsula, the situation of the North-South Civil War in North America, the issue of African colonies, and the attitude of Britain and other countries in the South American Alliance. After holding a bilateral meeting with Barreto in Lisbon, Portuguese Prime Minister Barreto said that this meeting was of great historical significance and that the British-Portuguese bilateral talks would be held every year in London and Lisbon in turn, and it was not ruled out that Brazil would be invited to join. On the Portuguese and British side, Barreto said that the two sides have built a new bilateral partnership between Britain and Portugal based on religious tolerance, economy, technology, and security and intelligence cooperation. British Prime Minister Clayton said that Britain will continue to help its ally Portugal cope with common challenges in the Atlantic region and strongly support Portugal's rule in its African colonies. The two prime ministers finally emphasized the importance of promoting the peace process in South America. Britain reiterated its support for the special relationship between Portugal and Brazil, while Portugal supported Britain's interests in Chile. The two countries said that they would firmly support each other on South American issues. However, Britain and Portugal were criticized by France, which had only left for a few days. French Prime Minister Olivier issued a statement on June 27, pointing out that Brazil, supported by Portugal, was using the Uruguayan issue to attempt to occupy Uruguayan territory, which was not in line with international norms. The chaos there should be stopped by Paraguay rather than Brazil. He asked Portugal to tell Brazil not to interfere, and asked Britain not to intervene in the matter because it was related to France's vital interests. To this end, Olivier visited Madrid and held talks with Spanish Prime Minister Ramon Narvaez. He received support from Spain. France will get coastal support from Peru, Spain's ally, so that the French army can enter Bolivia and Paraguay. This time, Italy's willingness to support Portugal has decreased, because unlike the last time, Emmanuel II chose to remain silent and neutral in the face of France. In short, Claxton originally planned to use this long visit to resolve the British diplomatic crisis caused by the Germanic Conference, and even further gain support in the Americas and the Balkans. For this reason, he chose to support Portugal, but he never thought that he would offend France. As a result, Italy chose to remain neutral. In desperation, Claxton could only return to London with Portugal's enthusiasm. Analysts pointed out that this was the first time in history that a British Prime Minister had visited abroad on such a large scale, but Claxton did not get what he wanted after the visit. In fact, except for Portugal, the measures taken by other countries were mostly symbolic, which made the symbolic significance greater than the substantive significance. In particular, the issue of South America cast a shadow on this picture. Analysts pointed out in the European Times that the purpose of Claxton's trip to southern Europe was to make Britain's allies in the region oppose the South American alliance as Britain did, and then affect North America and support the Confederacy. They analyzed that this showed that Britain seemed to have a strong anxiety about the development of the situation in South America and its prospects. Britain was worried that once the South American alliance developed, the neighboring countries would see the effect, and it might even continue to expand in the future, with more countries joining in. In the end, the Confederacy and Canada supported by Britain might become isolated cities in America. At that time, Britain's position in America would become very embarrassing. Therefore, it was the best strategy to prepare for a rainy day and let the South American alliance, which was not controlled by Britain, be joined by the influential Southern European countries in America to assist Britain in testing pressure and control. Even as the first bomb of Claxton's diplomacy, he did it for himself and Britain, so he gave the Southern European countries a reassurance, promising to be equal to other countries in South America, and vowed to cooperate with other countries to reasonably develop South America and combat other countries' infiltration into South America. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 257: Ottoman Empire's Counterattack on Britain. At the same time, Dutch Foreign Minister Hesbert van said in Amsterdam on June 28 that he was not sure about the results of Britain's trip to southern Europe. He also expressed doubts about whether Britain and southern European countries have reached an agreement on the Uruguay issue. Hesbert van said that whether Britain and southern European countries do so or not will not have any impact on the Netherlands' actions in South America, because the Netherlands is doing everything according to its own plan. He even said that Argentina, Venezuela, Colombia, and Ecuador, member states of the South American Union, have successively announced their joining of the International Women's League and the International Red Cross led by the Netherlands, and have obtained the approval of the applications of the two major organizations. They will officially become members on July 1. Hesbert van also leaked that these countries have also collectively applied to the International Court of Justice in The Hague to become members, and the application is currently being accepted. June 28, 1866, is a memorable day. Because on this day, Britain and the Russian Empire began negotiations in Brussels, Belgium, to discuss the negotiations between Britain and the Russian Empire on the armistice agreement in the Balkans. What's funny is that the Ottoman Empire, one of the main exhibitors, was not asked to participate. This surprised many people. After investigation, it turned out that Constantinople did not agree that Britain would compromise with the Russian Empire in the Balkans. Therefore, Constantinople anonymously reported that the Ottoman Empire's top leaders said they would not participate in the negotiations between Britain and Russia, and expressed dissatisfaction with Britain's desire to withdraw its troops alone without the Ottoman Empire. However, although this news was finally denied by Constantinople, it was not without reason, and no one would think that this news was just groundless. Obviously, in order to make peace with Russia, Britain ignored the emotions of the Ottoman Empire. How could the Ottoman Empire easily let Britain get away? July 1, 1866. The Ottoman Empire welcomed the Prussian visiting delegation team in Constantinople in a high-profile manner. The leader of the team was Prince Frederick Karl, the current Governor-General of Somalia in Africa of the Kingdom of Prussia and the commander of the Prussian African Combined Fleet. Prince Frederick Karl was grandly welcomed by the Ottoman Empire and received by the Ottoman Emperor Sultan Abdulaziz I in Constantinople. This was an exceptional treatment, which showed the importance the Ottoman Empire attached to Prussia. The series of actions that followed were even more overwhelming. The Ottoman Empire actually signed many trade contracts with Prussia, including arms. In the contract, the Ottoman Empire would purchase arms from Prussia, and also asked Prussia to send military strategists to Constantinople to teach and train Ottoman soldiers to increase the military capabilities of the Ottoman Empire. What made Britain jealous the most was that in order to win over Prussia, the Ottoman Empire was considering Prussia's request. Prussia wanted to buy the Qatar Peninsula, which the Ottoman Empire considered to be a barren land on the south side of the Persian Gulf and the east of the Arabian Peninsula, at a high price of £1 million, because it was far away from Constantinople. The Ottoman Empire was very happy about this. Constantinople agreed to the deal and would sign a contract with Prussia after making a final assessment. For this reason, Britain expressed its protest and expressed its opposition to Prussia's military influence entering the northern end of the Indian Ocean. In order to express its dissatisfaction, Britain actually summoned the Ottoman Empire's ambassador to London and asked the Ottoman Empire to withdraw this decision. However, the Ottoman Empire also summoned the British ambassador to Constantinople. It was rumored that the Ottoman Empire asked Britain to withdraw from the negotiations with the Tsarist Russian Empire before the Ottoman Empire would withdraw its decision to sell the Qatar Peninsula. Whether it is true or not, the negotiations between Britain and Russia and Belgium have come to a standstill, and the Qatar Peninsula transaction between Prussia and the Ottoman Empire seems to have been temporarily stopped by the Ottoman Empire for technical reasons, but anyone with a discerning eye can see that this is just Constantinople waiting for London's response. It is precisely because of this that the rumors that Britain and the Ottoman Empire have been constantly spreading are obviously testing each other's bottom line. Behind them, the secret competition between the Russian Empire and Prussia has gradually begun. London should be in a dilemma at this time. This is William Ivey's opinion on the current issues when he was interviewed by the weekly newspaper Echo, which has influence in Europe and the Far East. Echo is based in the Netherlands and aims to exert influence on the world. Even in the Far East in America outside of Europe, it is a newspaper with great influence. In addition to news focus, its pages also have focus character interviews, etc. Each issue is a famous figure in the Netherlands. The editor-in-chief of the newspaper is the former deputy editor-in-chief of the world's most influential European Times. He only switched to this newspaper that only serves the Netherlands 2 years ago. Because of his work experience at the European Times, he, who is only 40 years old this year, is unwilling to accept the status quo. He thinks that since the European Times can rise, why can't the Echo? Therefore, since he won the position of editor-in-chief of the newspaper with his ability and gradually mastered the management rights of the newspaper, he began to reform, cut many small pages, and finally completed the current structure. When William Ivey first came into contact with this weekly newspaper, he was very surprised, because it was very similar to a certain newspaper called Time Weekly in his previous life. He even doubted whether James in front of him was a time traveler. After investigation, he was relieved. It turned out that he was to blame, because when he was reforming the European Times, he accidentally described the possibility of the weekly magazine to the editor-in-chief of the newspaper, but it was rejected in the end. The Dutch leader of the European Times, Seroos, was strong and self-centered. He had a close relationship with William Ivey and was also talented. The most important thing was that he was loyal to the Netherlands, so William Ivey let him do what he wanted. Unexpectedly, James, who was in front of him, was talking to the editor-in-chief again, and the latter actually heard and understood William Ivey's idea. He was so excited that he bid farewell to the European Times and took over the Echo soon. After asking William Ivey for advice, he made the Echo very successful. Although there is no daily report in Europe that is as influential as the European Times, the specialization of the Echo is unique. Tracing the ins and outs of isolated events, introducing foreign countries, analyzing their territories, citing their political situations, helping readers overcome the difficulty of spelling, and using charts that have never been used by any European newspaper, it personalizes the complex international world in the second half of the 19th century. And in the process breaks the framework of European news that suffocates the spirit. It is precisely because James combined William Ivey's idea with professionalism that his influence even surpassed the European Times in the upper class of the world. Let's see who are the heroes in the first two issues. Chapter 258. Actually, we also have steam battleships. 1866. William Ivey was interviewed by James, the editor-in-chief of the Echo. Anyone who bought the newspaper was attracted by the man dressed as a Dutch royal monarch on the front page. Many people recognized the young face, King William Ivey of the Netherlands. They couldn't wait to read the conversation between William Ivey and James in the newspaper's focus. James, as the King of the Netherlands, do you feel pressure in life? William Ivey, when I first inherited the throne in December 1861, I was indeed very stressed, but because my life focuses on a regular schedule, especially in terms of sleep and diet, it is almost unchanged. James, since Your Majesty mentioned the daily routine, then may I ask Your Majesty, what is your biggest hobby in life? This is what many Dutch citizens want to know and are most curious about. William Ivey, swimming. The European mainland of the Netherlands is close to the Atlantic Ocean, and more than half of its territory belongs to lowlands below sea level. The Netherlands is a country with a strong sense of crisis. Therefore, I, like everyone in the Kingdom of the Netherlands, including ordinary people, must learn to swim since childhood. This is because everyone consciously understands that the dams in the lowlands may collapse at any time and seawater will flow back. Therefore, everyone subconsciously tries to learn these skills in order to give themselves a little more chance of survival. Therefore, all of us Dutch people have had close contact with the sea, and the training of sea survival skills has created the title of coachman in the Netherlands since the 16th century. It is not without reason that the Dutch have risen as a naval power. Therefore, I have received swimming training since I was 3 years old, and I still keep this hobby until now. James, wow, more than 20 years of the same day, that requires a lot of perseverance to do it. Your Majesty, from this we can understand that you will be very dedicated to doing things, and you will be persistent. So, for the development of the Netherlands in the distant Far East, many people seem to have complaints about your continuous investment of local Dutch resources there. I wonder what you think about this, William IV. Many things may produce results in a short period of time, but in the long-term planning of the country, this is difficult to achieve. In the plan between me and the Dutch Privy Council, the development plan of the Netherlands in the Far East is a long-term plan, and it is a plan that spans 5 years, 10 years, or even 20 years or more. Many plans will not be achieved overnight, and it takes time to show its power. Just like the current population immigration in the Netherlands, everyone used to resist, but now after a few years, more than 2 million local people immigrated there before the end of last year, and this year it has even exceeded 1 million. James, since Your Majesty mentioned the immigration issue, many people were not optimistic about these immigration policies at the time, and many people doubted how the Netherlands could do it. However, Your Majesty surprised the world. How did Your Majesty solve the problem of insufficient shipping ships? William IV. To complete this achievement in a short period of time, many people were indeed not optimistic at the time, and even thought that the Netherlands was whimsical. You must know that at that time, in addition to the need to use ships to sell industrial products to overseas markets, the Netherlands also needed to bring raw materials back to the country. At this time, it was necessary to build ships on a large scale to achieve the immigration policy of 1 million people per year. To be honest, many government officials at the time did not believe that it could be done, but everyone forgot the credibility of the Dutch Privy Council. Since we dared to issue such a decree, we had already put the issue of affecting credibility on the table for consideration. James, does it mean that the method of completing the plan had been thought of at the time? William IV. Of course, I and the entire Privy Council members including Prime Minister Thorbecke perfected the entire plan, so everyone saw that the Netherlands completed today's feat. James, Your Majesty, could you tell me in more detail how the plan will be implemented? William IV. Of course, it's very simple to explain. At that time, the annual transport rate of Dutch immigrant ships while maintaining normal trade was only about 200,000 at most, which is far from us. What should we do? It is impossible not to transport resources and industrial products, right? If that happens, it will be devastating to the Dutch economy. Why do we advocate immigration? It is to make the Dutch people live a better life. If immigration leads to a decline in the quality of life of the people, then there is no point in us doing that. So, we took this as the center point and held meetings for more than a week. What impressed me most was that Interior Minister Jongler almost squinted his eyes during the meeting. Everyone was exhausted, and in the end, everyone agreed to a more radical policy. James, what policy? I think everyone must be very interested. After all, it is the result of the Privy Council's week of work. William IV. Since there are not enough ships and resources must be used to maintain industrial development and national life, then now that the people are immigrating to the Far East, we have workers and sites, then why not move some factories that need to be transported back to the Netherlands and Europe from the Far East to the Far East? Suriname is not a bad place. Following this line of thought, everyone will be enlightened all of a sudden. James, it really makes me suddenly realize. It's really a soul-stirring feeling that makes people repent. In this way, the ships can use materials nearby, and as Your Majesty said, the radical strategy will immediately mobilize the enthusiasm of immigrants. I think the immigrants to the Far East will be more cooperative and willing to cooperate with the relocation of factories. William IV. Yes, the living environment in the Far East was not as good as that in the Netherlands at the beginning, but the prospects there are opportunities for many Dutch people at the bottom of society to turn over. This is what we have always emphasized. The Netherlands is a place to create miracles. Our policy in the Far East is to provide such opportunities for these people. Of course, the local upper-class Dutch can also make great plans in the Far East. After all, the market there is also vast, and the vast territory there is more than 100 times that of the Netherlands. Such a 100-fold opportunity is a math problem that even elementary school students can plan. James, but some Dutch people think that if they immigrate there, they will be cut off from Europe and will not be able to keep up with the pace of other European countries in industrial technology innovation. Is this true? William IV, I don't think this is a difficult problem. First of all, it is undeniable that Britain and France are absolutely dominant in the world's industrial status, but when it comes to leading, there are not many. After 10 years of great development, the Netherlands has steadily entered the small circle of the most advanced countries in all walks of life. For example, Britain's most advanced navy, the Netherlands' current shipbuilding will never be worse than the other side. James, Britain and France have steam battleships. Please recommend. Chapter 259, Battleships Nassau and Orange. William IV, I am not afraid of leaks. In fact, we are also building them, and we have already built 2. James, oh my God, is this true? Does Your Majesty know the consequences of this statement? William IV, of course, but the Netherlands has become one of the naval countries with the most advanced technology in the world. Just as you mentioned just now, the Netherlands has become a country with steam battleship technology and the ability to manufacture it, alongside Britain and France. William IV, Britain is facing the problem of diplomatic choices in the international arena. The Mediterranean will not change many countries' vigilance against Britain because of 1 or 2 visits by the Prime Minister. Although the British Royal Navy is the best in the world, it does not have enough and safe supply ports, which will become a shortcoming for Britain. In recent years, the international situation has changed rapidly. The Kingdom of the Netherlands and other countries have felt that the world pattern is very different from that of 5 years ago. Therefore, the era when Britain used to rely on the navy to sail to other people's coastlines and make other countries bow their heads seems to have made other countries very disgusted and resisted. James, does Your Majesty think that the British Navy is not enough to maintain Britain's previous status? Yes, that's what Your Majesty said. There is a huge difference between 5 years ago and 5 years later. William IV, of course it's different. It's not just the Netherlands that thinks so, but the whole world. James, does this mean that Britain has declined? William IV, it can't be said that Britain has declined. It can only be said that other countries have progressed too fast. James, what is the attitude of the Netherlands towards the implementation of British foreign policy now? Your Majesty, can you say that? William IV, this is a difficult topic. Seriously speaking, the Netherlands can be said to have mixed feelings about Britain. Everyone knows that the Netherlands and Britain have had the closest integration under the rule of the United Kingdom of a king. The Netherlands lost its advantages over Britain, including capital and naval advantages, because Britain learned from the Netherlands internally. It is precisely because of such a profound history that when the Netherlands faces Britain, we are sufficiently vigilant to guard against Britain. At the same time, because of the same national conditions, the Netherlands has a foreign policy of engagement with Britain. Therefore, in the past few years, the relationship between the Netherlands and Britain has been in this contradictory state. James, Your Majesty just mentioned that the Netherlands unexpectedly already has 2 steam battleships. To be honest, I still feel my heart beating fast. I believe that with the news, the world will be shocked. You should know that Britain and France currently have only 3 and 4 battleships of this type respectively. Among the 4 ships, France also has one that is half sail and half steam. Moreover, French battleships are generally small in tonnage. If the Dutch steam battleships are large enough, then... William IV, I know what you want to say, but the tonnage of the new Dutch battleships is no less than that of the British type. James, I'm very curious, have these 2 Dutch steam battleships been named? William IV, of course, they are named after our Dutch Nassau-Orange royal family. The first one is Nassau and the second one is called Orange. James, I have to say, these names are good. Let me ask Your Majesty again, can you tell me where the Nassau and Orange are deployed? They should not be in Amsterdam, right? William IV, yes, the Orange is currently in Pearl Harbor in the Hawaiian Islands and Surabaya port in the East Indies. James, the main ace army of the Netherlands is actually deployed in the Far East Pacific region. William IV, in fact, the military strength of the Netherlands in Europe is not weak either. James, But putting the most advanced warships in the Pacific shows how much the Netherlands values that place. Does the Netherlands really value the Far East so much? William IV, we are also helpless. The Netherlands is surrounded by big countries. This is a very dangerous thing for the Netherlands. The strategic depth of the Netherlands in Europe is too narrow. This environment makes it very difficult for the Netherlands to develop. This is something everyone knows, and there is no need to hide it. The Far East is precisely the key to the Netherlands solving this problem. We do not deny that the Netherlands wants to use this to make the Netherlands a great power. The Russian Empire occupied the entire northern half of the Eurasian continent with hundreds of years of continuous southward expansion and eastward expansion, and was feared by the East and the West. With its unrivaled navy, Britain conquered cities and islands in the world's waters and became the overlord of the sea. The Netherlands does not have such capital, so the Netherlands can only go to the Far East to open up wasteland away from the core circle of hegemony among European countries. Yes, it is to open up wasteland. We are ready to build a new powerful country, the Netherlands, with a constructive attitude. James, it seems that everything is going according to the plan of Your Majesty and the Dutch government. Congratulations to the prosperity of the Netherlands under Your Majesty's leadership. The sale of Echo around the world has spread William IV's relevant statements around the world, and the attitudes of various countries have different reactions. However, William actually used this newspaper to announce that the Netherlands has secretly become the third country to own the most advanced steam battleship in the world's navy. For a time, the world was shocked. If Britain and France could have it before, so that other countries in the world could not have any ideas, then the possession of the Netherlands has put great pressure on some major countries in the world such as Prussia, Austria-Hungary and even Italy. The pride deliberately promoted by the government in China has raised people's expectations, so that the sudden appearance of steam battleships in the Netherlands has made them also ask their respective governments to let their countries join the ranks as soon as possible. They naturally don't know how many accessories and matching technologies are needed to build such a steam battleship, but this is the counter effect that managers receive under the policy of keeping the people ignorant. The people pay so much tax every year, they don't want to see a cowardly government, because it is not worth the tax they pay. What they want is the glory of not falling behind other countries. Yes, it's that simple. So Prussia, the Russian Empire, Austria-Hungary, Italy, Spain, Portugal, Sweden, etc., were all implicated by William IV's interview, and they couldn't help but complain about his sins. Even North America, both the North and the South, were confused by the news that the Netherlands suddenly had a steam battleship. The Lincoln government announced that it would contact the Kingdom of the Netherlands and ask the Netherlands to help the United States of America build their steam battleship fleet. To this end, the Lincoln government announced that it would set up a special fund of more than $10 million, £2 million, to purchase and introduce the technology from the Netherlands. $10 million, equivalent to 0.55% of their GDP of $1.8 billion. This investment is not small. For this reason, the world is silent. But the opponents of the Lincoln government dared not keep silent. The Davis government in the South expressed that it did not want the Netherlands to grant this technology to the Lincoln government in the North, because this undermined the position that the Dutch government had always declared, that is, to maintain world peace, and the Netherlands should not do this. However, even they themselves did not believe that the Netherlands would realize such a slogan. Because they themselves said one thing and did another, which was a unique gene of the English inherited from the UK. Chapter 260, Arabian Peninsula Dispute. 1866, not long after British Claystone visited Europe, Russian Prime Minister Gorkagov also visited southern Europe and France. During this visit to Paris, after talks with Olivier, at a public press conference, Gorkagov said that the Russian Empire wanted to negotiate with Britain to resolve the Balkan Peninsula issue, but due to the obstruction of the Ottoman Empire, the results of the negotiations in Belgium were limited. Therefore, he expressed disappointment with the negotiations and hoped that Britain could maintain its independent diplomacy as a great power, not be affected, and inject the power of peace into the Balkan Peninsula. Olivier also expressed the hope that the war in Europe would end as soon as possible and return peace to the European continent. He only said Europe, not all over the world. Therefore, Oliver's words made many people in other countries, such as America, dissatisfied. Even in Brazil, many people called Olivier the shame of France and a hypocritical Frenchman because France supported Paraguay's invasion of Uruguay and Brazil. However, Olivier was unmoved. The two of them also jointly expressed dissatisfaction with Prussia's acquisition of the Qatar Peninsula in the Arabian Peninsula, and asked the Ottoman Empire and Prussia to clarify and cancel the deal. Obviously, in this position, they are in the same position as Britain. Neither of them wants Prussia to gain a foothold in the Middle East to expand its presence there. Although they had expressed to the Ottoman Empire many times before that they wanted to acquire territory there, they were all rejected by the Ottoman Empire. It would be fine if they treated everyone equally, but now Prussia, who had kept silent, has obtained what they wanted. How can this make them happy? Naturally, they spoke out against this deal. But surprisingly, the Austro-Hungarian Empire led by Joseph I did not join the wave of opposition, which was really unexpected. However, the Kingdom of Prussia fought back first. Prime Minister Bismarck issued a statement saying that the transaction was a matter of mutual consent. He called out to these countries that Prussia used real money to buy it, instead of robbing it like they did. There is a difference between Prussia and them. The Prime Minister of Prussia said that Prussia will be committed to peaceful exchanges with all countries and help the Ottoman Empire achieve industrial development within its capacity. He also said that Prussia will set up a special development fund of no less than £10 million to carry out economic development in Prussian Somalia. If the transaction is successful, Prussia will set up £5 million to develop the Qatar Peninsula and build one of the first top industrial bases in the Arabian Peninsula. He also called on the Ottoman Empire not to retreat from the threat, but to use the empire's resources, because this industrial base will be used to absorb the country's talent support and cultivate the country's own industrial operations. If the cooperation is abandoned, the Ottoman Empire will lose its only chance to overtake in industrial development. However, Prime Minister Bismarck obviously underestimated the influence of these great powers. On July 23, the Ottoman Empire announced that the transaction negotiations were suspended due to external factors. For the remaining issues in the final stage of the negotiations, the Ottoman Empire made clear requirements, insisting on maintaining the national interests of the Ottoman Empire, requiring Prussia to guarantee the industrial advancement of the Ottoman Empire, while also guaranteeing Prussia's diplomatic position of supporting the Ottoman Empire. This was an unpredictable advance payment for Prussia, and Prussia naturally refused. Many people analyzed that the Ottoman Empire was currently a part of the war, fighting with the Russian Empire, and had differences with its ally Britain on whether to continue the war or stop the war. The Ottoman Empire's request was very excessive. After all, once agreed, it meant that Prussia had to face the three countries of Britain, Russia and France. Although Prussia is now strong, these three countries are not only not weaker than him, but even Britain and others have surpassed him. In this case, how could Prussia dare to agree? Even Bismarck, who has been called the Iron Prime Minister, refused without hesitation at this moment. However, with Prussia's refusal, the Ottoman Empire was in an awkward position. Perhaps it found that it had thought too simply, so it lowered its demands. It only asked Prussia to increase the amount. However, it seemed that the compromise of the Ottoman Empire was discovered at this time. Britain stood up again and expressed its willingness to work with the Ottoman Empire to negotiate a truce with the Russian Empire. Britain did not even oppose the territorial trade between the Ottoman Empire and Prussia. Just when the countries were curious, even William IV had just aroused interest, but he vaguely guessed Britain's thoughts, so he summoned Prime Minister Thorbecke. Thorbecke's cabinet government later appointed Schindler, the Dutch ambassador to Constantinople, to issue an order. Analysts pointed out that Britain is an important participant in the current Ottoman Empire's Balkan Peninsula issue, and it is also a troublemaker. It keeps changing its face in the Balkan Peninsula. Now, when the negotiation is only one step away from breaking the deadlock, it begins to waver again. It is obvious that it wants to squeeze the benefits of the Russian Empire and the Ottoman Empire. Britain's irresponsible and different statements have once again cast a shadow on the peace talks in the Balkan Peninsula. Britain's withdrawal obviously hurt the Ottoman Empire's sultan's motivation to continue the war. Romania is very likely to become a territory recognized by all countries in the Russian Empire. William IV looked at the Privy Council members and said, therefore, the war in the Balkan Peninsula will come to an end here. Thorbecke said, Your Majesty, based on Britain's past practices, will he leave easily? William IV, it depends on whether the benefits given by the Ottoman Empire are gradually large enough. Hesped von, should Britain go home and keep a backup plan? William IV remembered that every time Britain left a colony in his previous life, it would leave them with difficult and complicated problems, so that the land would fall into a state of chaos after they left, creating hope for Britain to return or a channel to maintain influence. Even let those who flatter Britain become Britain's minions in the country or region, doing bad things for Britain that it is inconvenient to show up to do. Therefore, Hesbert Vaughan's question made William IV sigh and blurt out, Britain will naturally not be willing to leave. After all, a large number of British soldiers died in the Balkans. If Britain returns without any effort, the Whig government will definitely not get any good results. Therefore, Britain will definitely ask the Ottoman Empire for benefits. William IV continued, Prussia's purchase of territory in Qatar has not been opposed by the Ottoman Empire, which makes Britain even more eager to move. So I guess that Britain will also be committed to Qatar, the territory that Prussia wants to buy. Chapter 261, Relations with the United States Act. 1866, the House of Representatives of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. The Netherlands is divided into the Senate and the House of Representatives, also known as the former is the first chamber and the latter is the second chamber, reviewed the proposal initiated by Representative Panison from the South American Overseas Province Suriname Province, requiring the House of Representatives of the Kingdom of the Netherlands to pass the request of the United States of America to support steam battleships and implement the friendly relations between the Netherlands and the United States of America. Representative Panison even asked the cabinet government of the Kingdom of the Netherlands to sign an agreement with the United States and the House of Representatives to form a de facto alliance. We have an interest in developing relations with the United States of America, because we and the United States of America are both highly industrialized countries, and the two countries have similar values. Both countries have the same pursuit of science and technology, and most importantly, among the 23 million people in the United States of America, there are more than 1.5 million Dutch people, which is a huge base. It is the third largest ethnic group in the North, second only to the 6 million Germans and 4 million Irish people, including the Irish in Scotland and Wales, that is, the Celtics. The Confederate States of the South are mainly British from England. Our Dutch compatriots have a good quality of life there and play a major role in building America. They have also brought important help to the development of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. Through the investigation I collected, I found that the United States of America accounts for more than 10% of the Dutch King's overseas investment today, and the consumption of American industrial products also accounts for 18% of the Netherlands' production and export. At the same time, American Dutch also occupy an important share of investment in the Far East. They brought the latest American industrial technology to Australia and East India in the Far East, injecting fresh and important blood into the development of the Netherlands in the Far East. They have provided important support for the development of the Dutch motherland for many years. Therefore, we have reason to respond to support our compatriots there. Therefore, I ask the Parliament to pass a proposal to support America and deepen the relationship between the Netherlands and the United States of America. 1.5 million Dutch people consume 18% of the industrial products exported by the Netherlands. The Dutch like more than 10% of the overseas investment amount. These data were listed by Panison, which persuaded the members of the Dutch House of Representatives. As soon as the bill of MP Panison was proposed in the Dutch House of Representatives, it attracted the attention of European countries, because the Netherlands was obviously provoking the nerves of the British. Needless to say, the country is undoubtedly the UK. If the Dutch House of Representatives passes the bill, it will be a bill that has always been hostile to the UK. The greatest significance is that the passage of this bill requires the approval of more than 2/3 of the members. The passage of the bill, that is, all of these indicate a very serious problem when it comes to the introduction, that is, more than 2/3 of the members of the Netherlands and the civil voices behind them have an anti-British basis. To put it more bluntly, the Dutch people's opposition to the UK has become a generally recognized behavior, which has attracted great attention in the UK. Because as long as it is passed, it means that the UK is not recognized in the European continent. The consequences will be chain-like, which means that the UK needs to prevent becoming a hostile country to the other side. When the British government's Foreign Secretary Russell accepted questions from the country's important newspapers such as the Financial Times and the London Times about this matter, his face was very serious, and he expressed that he was very concerned about the progress of the bill. At the same time, he said that he would speak to the Dutch Parliament, indicating that the UK does not want the bill to pass, because it is obviously not good for the relationship between the UK and the Netherlands. Viscount Charlene, Speaker of the House of Commons, also appealed to the Dutch House of Representatives and the British House of Commons, asking the Dutch House of Representatives not to pass the proposal, saying that the British House of Commons will closely monitor the progress of the bill and be ready to respond accordingly. As for what response to make, the Speaker said that now is not the time to announce it, and he did not want the situation to develop to this point. Baron Basten, Speaker of the Dutch House of Representatives, said that the Netherlands is an independent country, and the country's foreign policy does not allow foreign interference, which is immoral. We firmly oppose it and said that if the Kingdom of the Netherlands encounters a hostile attack, don't expect the Netherlands to swallow this bitter fruit. The Dutch Parliament reserves the right to take all necessary measures to safeguard the rights and interests of the Netherlands. The two parliaments' exchanges have made Europe discover the subtle changes in the relationship between the two countries. The previous German summit made all countries worried for a while, but now the development of the relationship between the UK and the Netherlands has made these countries feel relieved. Even the deterioration of the relationship between the two countries has made all countries feel relieved. Gijsbert Feng, the head of the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs, said at a press conference of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs that the Dutch Parliament statement is in line with the Netherlands' long-standing foreign policy, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs supports the statement of Speaker Basten of the Dutch House of Representatives. Afterwards, Dutch Prime Minister Thorbecke also expressed dissatisfaction with the British warning without hesitation, believing that Britain was infringing on the national rights of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. On July 25, 1866, the Dutch House of Representatives held a final vote on the bill proposed by Congressman Pannessen, and in the end, it was passed with far more than two-thirds of the votes. The Dutch House of Representatives passed the proposal in a non-binding manner, requiring the Thorbecke cabinet government to support the development of Dutch people in the United States of America with practical actions, and to help the United States of America strengthen its self-defense militarily, resist invasions from foreign countries, and strengthen the industrial ties and interactions between the two countries. Deepen the emotional ties between the peoples of the two countries. To this end, the Dutch cabinet government needs to have more contact with the Lincoln government to promote coordination between the two governments. This bill is called the Relations with the United States of America Act. The bill states that this law authorizes the Dutch government to continue to maintain commercial, cultural and other relations between the citizens of the Kingdom of the Netherlands and the people of the United States of America in order to promote the foreign policy of the Netherlands. All programs or exchanges conducted or implemented with foreign countries, foreign governments or similar entities also apply to the people of the United States of America. At the same time, the bill details the policy goals of the Kingdom of the Netherlands towards the United States of America, including maintaining the national stability of the United States of America, maintaining the status quo in North America, maintaining commercial and cultural relations between the Netherlands and the United States of America, and protecting the rights of the people and the safety of the Dutch people in the United States of America. The bill clearly states that any attempt to treat the United States of America by non-peaceful means will threaten the interests of the Netherlands in the United States of America, and the Netherlands will be seriously concerned. The Netherlands will continue to provide defensive weapons to the United States of America. The Netherlands will also resist any resort to force to harm the Dutch people of American descent, including high-pressure means such as property damage and physical safety damage, and endanger the actions of all the people of the United States of America. However, the bill did not state that the Netherlands was obliged to send troops to help the United States of America if war broke out in the United States of America. It also did not clearly state how the Netherlands would respond if the North American crisis was provoked by the United States of America. This left room for the relationship between Britain and the Netherlands to ease and not go all the way to the end. However, despite this, the passage of the bill by the Netherlands still caused great anger in Britain. The next day, more than three-quarters of the members of the British House of Commons voted to pass the bill proposed by the opposition Tory party to counter the Netherlands. Chapter 262, Counterattack, Relations with Portugal Act. The Dutch House of Representatives passed the Relations with the Commonwealth of America Act, which was unexpected by the British. In anger and humiliation, the British lost both face and money. The opposition Tory party in the UK took the opportunity to launch the Relations with Portugal Act. In this bill, almost all the regulations of the Netherlands on the Commonwealth of America were copied, and strong support was given to the Kingdom of Portugal, which had recently fallen out with the Netherlands and had always been close to the Tories. This time, Even some Whig members who had always been dissatisfied with the Tories supported the bill launched by the Tory leader Disraeli in the House of Commons. It can be imagined that the Netherlands has definitely aroused the anger of the United Kingdom this time. However, the Netherlands does not seem to be ready to give up. It should be known that the Netherlands has recently had many conflicts with Portugal in Mozambique, Angola and Congo in Africa, and in South America. Because of Portugal's support for Brazil, the Netherlands decisively stood on the side of Argentina, the second largest country in South America, to deal with Uruguay, so the war between the two countries continues, and it is obvious that it will not stop in South America. Argentina and Brazil have obviously become a kind of proxy war in some form. Brazil is strong enough and has a large population. Therefore, the Netherlands has won over Venezuela, Colombia and Ecuador for Argentina. It should be noted that Colombia and Venezuela are just in the north of Brazil. The north-south attack on Brazil supported by Portugal has also made Portugal feel pressured. Fortunately, I don't know what happened to the Netherlands. It actually agreed to the request of the United States of America, fulfilling Argentina's expectation of joining the United States of America into the South American alliance, and eventually worsened the relationship between Britain and the Netherlands. It is even said that Britain is now making it difficult for ships to pass through the Netherlands on the Suez Canal for various reasons, in order to threaten the Netherlands to drive the United States of America out of the South American alliance. However, the Netherlands did not give in the end, but further clarified its support for the United States of America's contract with the United States of America. In the end, Portugal benefited from it. These events happened in less than a month. But it triggered a series of effects on the European situation. Unconsciously, the previous pattern of Europe has been reshuffled. When did the Netherlands dare to challenge Britain, the leader of the 6 major European countries? This is everyone's question. Even the Dutch are not surprised. French Emperor Napoleon I lamented to his subjects at the Palace of Versailles that the Netherlands has risen, and he cannot treat the Netherlands as a medium-sized country. France should give the Netherlands due respect. Even King William I of Prussia expressed his appreciation for King William IV of the Netherlands in his speech to the Prussian parliament, and looked forward to more cooperation between the Netherlands and Prussia in the future. Obviously, this is another great power that is willing to give the Netherlands such a status even though it has not made it clear that the Netherlands has the status of a great power. Alexander I even praised William IV very much and expressed his expectation for the Netherlands to increase its relations with the Russian Empire in the future. As for Joseph I's Austro-Hungarian Empire, he expressed no good feelings towards the Netherlands, but agreed with the Netherlands' courage to put forward its own demands to Britain, and expressed the hope to cooperate with the Netherlands in the future. The statements of these countries have made Britain seem to be excluded from the support of the European powers. In addition, the Ottoman Empire, which is in a stalemate with Britain, has already expressed support for the Netherlands in 5 of the 6 major European countries, which has given people in European countries a sense of surprise. When did the Netherlands gain support from so many big countries? And this was when they were facing the hegemony of Britain. In this regard, William IV said to his wife Alexandra, "The British government and Queen Victoria have always lived in a world where force is power." Although this is true, she forgot one thing, that is, people's hearts are made of tofu, and national interests also change with the passage of time. The Netherlands began to send elites of the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs to communicate with various countries a few years ago. Over the years, it has achieved remarkable results. The Netherlands has been recognized in Paris, Berlin, St. Petersburg, Constantinople, and Vienna. The Netherlands has almost made the interests of these countries dance with the Dutch foreign policy. This is what the offshore balancing hand policy that the United Kingdom has always implemented does not have, because what they have, the Netherlands has, and what the Netherlands is implementing, the United Kingdom cannot use. After all, the means of offshore balancing hands, such as a big country, seem strong and powerful, but they are easy to be implemented by the country's plan. The fear that they will become the object of checks and balances by the United Kingdom after they become strong is a place where countries are wary of the United Kingdom. The Netherlands brings benefits to various countries, but does not have checks and balances, so they are more willing to accept the Dutch gift. Alexandra learned a lot from William IV's teachings. For some reason, William IV has been constantly indoctrinating her with political science recently, which has given her a clear understanding of both domestic and international policies. From this, she also understands the current international position of the Netherlands. What was the wonderful state of the Kingdom of Denmark before? She finally understood why the Netherlands did not send troops to Denmark in the first place, and why William IV wanted to let the Danish royal family marry with other countries through marriage to resolve the crisis of Prussia and Austria invading Holstein and Schleswig. William IV has not let go of any international dynamics recently. In fact, it is also for the future of the Netherlands, including international women's organizations, so that Alexandra can quickly face sudden situations and cultivate her ability to have a female leader, so that the Netherlands can gain more advantages to face the future changes in Europe. Some people may ask William IV, then it is also possible to find a man to head the International Women's Association, because as long as the ability is okay, the same effect can be achieved. But William IV didn't think so. The issue of the loyalty of the First Division was a big signboard of the Dutch royal family. The next generation didn't know, but this generation, because there was no term limit, would be likely to be ruled by Alexandra for a long time. Second, William IV was ready to let Alexandra use this opportunity to cultivate an international perspective, and finally feed back to the cultivation of future heirs of the royal family, including Prince Albert. William IV and Alexandra will have more consistent positions and views in cultivating their offspring. Instead of using in-laws like some countries, and finally forgetting the international reality in order to get close to Denmark, the next generation eventually took away the great Netherlands created by the couple. This example is the same as the German Emperor William II in the previous life. William I and Bismarck finally built such a large empire for decades, but ended up with that bleak end, which was really cruel. Chapter 263 Constantinople, It's So Hard for Me. In order to fight back against the Netherlands, Britain passed the Relations with Portugal Act to disgust the Netherlands. Although William IV did not want to show off his strength to Britain, sometimes the national emotions cannot be easily calmed down after you mobilize them. If you ignore it, it will eventually backfire on your own rule. Under the current circumstances, the Dutch government knew that another counterattack against Britain would hurt the already conflicting relationship between Britain and the Netherlands, but at this time it could not care so much, and William IV also had his own set of plans. Therefore, when Prime Minister Thorbecke and others asked William IV whether to fight back, William IV finally agreed. On July 27, 1866, the 31-year-old Dutch government ambassador to the Kingdom of Prussia, Nicholas Pearce, handed over to the 30-year-old new ambassador to Prussia, Wesman, and Nicholas Pearce was transferred back to Amsterdam to become the new third deputy minister of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. His status in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is second only to Foreign Minister Hubert van, Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs Venus, and second Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs Jerry Hunt. With Nicholas Pearce becoming the third deputy minister, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs led by Hubert van was formally reformed. The first deputy minister, Minister Venus, was responsible for assisting Hubert van in managing the overall situation while also being responsible for African affairs. The second deputy minister, Jerry Hunt, was responsible for American and Far Eastern affairs. The third deputy minister, Nicholas Pearce, was responsible for European affairs and Near Eastern affairs. As the affairs of these three deputy ministers were implemented and their responsibilities were clear, the style of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Netherlands became clearer and more efficient. On July 29, 1866, Nicholas Pearce, the third deputy foreign minister of the Netherlands Ministry of Foreign Affairs, officially visited Berlin again in the name of deputy foreign minister. At the same time, he was also the special envoy of William IV. The new ambassador to Prussia, Wesman, accompanied him throughout the visit. During his visit to Berlin, he was interviewed by Prussian newspapers and received Bismarck and William I. After that, he even held talks with Prussian Deputy Foreign Minister Merck. Few people know what the two talked about. Soon after Pearce returned to Amsterdam, he visited Constantinople on August 3. At this time, the subject of the talks between the two countries was made public. It turned out that the Netherlands also learned from the Kingdom of Prussia and set its sights on the barren southern territories of the Ottoman Empire in the Persian Gulf in the Near East. The Kingdom of Prussia was interested in the Qatar Peninsula, and then the United Kingdom also had ideas. Now the new Dutch diplomat has also expressed his intention to gain a foothold here during his visit. The ruling class of Constantinople was a little hesitant. They don't understand why these European countries actually want to get territory in the Persian Gulf. After all, it can be said that it is the most marginal place of the Ottoman Empire, and it can also be said to be the most priceless area. Except for some strategic reasons, there is almost no economic value. Could it be that these countries really bought it to show off their anger? His Majesty Sultan Abdulaziz I also had an idea. He wanted to reject the Netherlands' purchase idea. After all, if European countries took root there, it would be a very dangerous behavior for the national security of the Ottoman Empire. But when the Netherlands showed its trump card, he hesitated. Because the Netherlands was willing to take out 25 million Dutch guilders, £1 million to buy the UAE region next to the Qatar Peninsula that Prussia wanted to buy. Another barren land was favored by European powers. £1 million is not a small amount. You must know that the amount required to build a sailing-level VI battleship is between £10,000 and £20,000. The first-class sailing battleship is the most serviced battleship in the British Navy at present, which is only more than 20 ships. The price of each ship is just over £100,000. In other words, if the Ottoman Empire agrees to the deal with the Netherlands, it will have the funds to buy almost 10 first-class battleships, which is really a windfall. In addition to the previous purchase of Qatar Peninsula by the Kingdom of Prussia for £1 million, £2 million can definitely transform the inferior weapons of the Ottoman Empire. Moreover, Constantinople is now facing the threat of the Russian Empire, and he also wants to make more friends and fewer enemies. It seems to be in harmony with Britain, but in fact, interests are paramount. Therefore, Constantinople is indeed hesitant now. However, the Netherlands will naturally not wait for Constantinople to consider carefully. Even if they want to trade, they need Constantinople to make a quick decision. And it is in line with the idea set by the Netherlands for him. Therefore, before Britain reacted, the Netherlands announced that it would jointly purchase these two places with Prussia, indicating that if Constantinople refused the two countries' common advance and retreat transaction, the two countries would find territory in the north of the Persian Gulf, that is, the Persian Empire. This is a threat. The Netherlands and Prussia are obviously a kind of if you don't sell, well, I will buy your old enemy, the Persian Empire. With this money, I believe that the Persian Empire will be greatly strengthened. At that time, the Iraqi region at the top of the Persian Gulf in the Mesopotamian basin will likely start a war again. This made the upper echelons of Constantinople feel the seriousness of the situation. After all, the Persian Gulf has always been controlled by the Ottoman Empire and the Persian Empire. Now, according to the practice of the Netherlands and Prussia, this is a strong entry. Because the Ottoman Empire's territory is close to Europe, its own economy and weapons are almost synchronized with Europe, but the Persian Empire is a little autistic. If the Persian Empire, which has always been autistic, gets economic support from these two countries and military assistance to keep up with the pace of the Ottoman Empire, then the current situation of being suppressed by the Ottoman Empire will be broken. So despite British opposition, Constantinople finally accepted the joint action of the Netherlands and Prussia. On August 10, 1866, Dutch Prime Minister Thorbecke and Prussian Prime Minister Bismarck jointly visited Constantinople. In Constantinople, they signed a territorial purchase agreement with Sultan Abdulaziz I. Since then, the Qatar Peninsula has fallen into the hands of the Kingdom of Prussia, and the UAE region has become a new overseas territory of the Netherlands. This was a public signing ceremony, so the next day, this picture became the focus of newspapers around the world. Thorbecke and Bismarck were full of smiles on their faces. Although Sultan Abdulaziz I smiled, he was a little bitter. However, more people noticed from this signing ceremony that the European pattern seemed to have begun to spill over because of this signing ceremony. The competition among European powers seemed to be no longer limited to the European continent from this moment on. And then thinking of the statements made by various countries on the issue of the ownership of Uruguay in South America some time ago, they guessed that this transaction would change a lot of things. On August 15, 1866, Constantinople once again welcomed guests, and not one, but several. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 264 Ministry of Foreign Affairs Meeting 1866 French Prime Minister Olivier, Italian Prime Minister Marco Manghetti, Spanish Prime Minister Ramon Narvaez and Portuguese Prime Minister Barreto jointly visited Constantinople. Constantinople seemed to be overcast. France, Italy, Spain and Portugal also expressed their interest in Prussia and the Netherlands purchasing the Arabian Peninsula territory of Constantinople. And the target was the southern tip of the Arabian Peninsula. The Ottoman Empire has not said anything yet, but Britain, far across the English Channel, is anxious. Even Britain was in a hurry. The new Prime Minister Clayton immediately sent Foreign Secretary Russell to launch a battleship from London and bring Minister Russell to Constantinople. He also expressed his intention to buy Constantinople, and was more ambitious. He joined the ranks of the four countries and sought to buy the Arabian Peninsula territory of the Ottoman Empire. For this reason, Constantinople's thoughts at this moment were, "I'm too hard." Some regretted agreeing to the deal with the Netherlands and Prussia. Finally, under the joint pressure of these countries, Constantinople compromised, although reluctantly. But the money that should be collected still needs to be collected. The Oman region was divided into three parts, from Rawhide on the southern border of the western Oman region to Amal and Mutton in the southeast, the future Dhofar province of Oman, which were sold to Portugal for £500,000. Sakir to Dawit Island in the south and Gubar in the north, the future central province of Oman, were sold to Spain for £500,000. The rest from Gelat, Giba to Maskat in the east and Suhar in the north, the future Zahira province, interior province, East 1 North Province, East 1 South Province, Maskat Province, North Badanet Province of Oman, were all bought by the French Empire, worth £1.6 million. The rest of these east to the Gulf of Oman were all bought by the French Empire, worth £1.6 million. After all, this place is close to the Indian Ocean and the Persian Gulf. The strategic location is too important. It faces the sea on both sides, so the value is naturally different. The Ottoman Empire originally wanted £2 million, but France had already suppressed it by £400,000. Italy bought Yemen from the west of the border with Oman to the east of Attic City, mainly in the future Mar province, Hadramaut province, and Shabwa province in Yemen, with an area twice the size of the western region of Yemen. Although there are more deserts, Italy still wants to take this huge territory, so it paid £1 million. Britain took the area extending from the west to the Red Sea, Jaf, Sada, Hajjah, Maut, Hodeidah, Zamar, Ib, Abayan, Lahij, Taiz, and Dali. Obviously, Britain controlled the Suez Canal and did not want to be controlled by other countries on the Indian Ocean side. Therefore, taking this place would allow them to confront Prussia, which occupied Somalia in the south. The two countries formed a confrontation in the Gulf of Aden, but Britain offered the same price as France to buy eastern Oman, a total of £1.6 million. In short, Constantinople's harvest this time was not bad, with a total of £7.2 million sold. But the territory paid also completely drove Constantinople off the stage in the Indian Ocean direction. This is not a question of willingness, but a situation that forces them to do so. Moreover, everyone has seen the opportunity. The stalemate between the Ottoman Empire and the Russian Empire is the best time to take advantage of the situation. Constantinople dare not defend these countries easily, because it has been tied up by the Russian Empire for most of its energy and military strength. Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Hespert van is holding an internal meeting of the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs with his three capable deputies. They are the first Deputy Minister Venus, the second Deputy Minister of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs Jerry Hunt, and the third Deputy Minister Nicholas Pearson. The reason why we were so successful this time was not only because the price we offered was fair, but also because the war between the Russian Empire and the Ottoman Empire made it difficult for Constantinople to continue to hold on, and the breakup with Britain made the Ottoman Empire look at the major powers with fear. Nicholas Pearson summed up his trip to the Near East. He also said, "But the most important thing is that the people of the Ottoman Empire are living in poverty, and the upper class in Constantinople feel pressure. Therefore, they are ready to take this opportunity to set aside the influence of Britain on the Ottoman Empire and accept the influence of other countries to balance Britain. For the Ottoman Empire to conduct peace talks with the Russian Empire in a more equal status. I think this should be the most needed and urgent thing for the ruling class of the Ottoman Empire." It is easy to understand why the Ottoman Empire actually agreed to almost all the territorial purchase requests from European countries. Hespert van heard this, paused, looked up at Pearson, and asked, "Will the armistice between the Ottoman Empire and the Russian Empire be completed soon?" Nicholas Pearson, Alexander II has recently faced a huge threat of public opinion at home. The publication of the book Crime and Punishment has triggered an anti-Alexander II trend in the Russian Empire. Therefore, the Russian Empire seems to be willing to stop its fight with the Ottoman Empire and stop after conquering Romania. But but what? Nicholas Pearson, but the Russian Empire seems to have been intentionally or unintentionally mobilizing its troops in the Balkan Peninsula recently. They say they are withdrawing, but they don't want to, because the army has not changed much. It seems like a rotation. But now the Russian Empire and the Austro-Hungarian Empire are generally stable. Are there any conflicts with Prussia? This rotation seems unreasonable. Hespot von was also in deep thought, and the first deputy minister Venus and the second deputy minister of foreign affairs Jerry Hunter next to him were frowning. Venus asked, "How did you know that, Pearson?" Nicholas Pearson, when I was in Prussia before, many military figures there often express various military opinions, so I learned about these. Hespot von asked, "What do you mean?" Nicholas Pearson, so I guess that Alexander II of the Russian Empire does not seem to stop there, and even has the idea of training the Ottoman Empire. What? Training. Hespot von, Venus and Jerry Hunter all looked at Nicholas Pearson in disbelief. Sand River Empire, St. Petersburg. Under the strong suppression of Alexander II, the recent chaos in the Russian Empire caused by crime and punishment was finally suppressed, and it finally calmed down recently. Did they also take the opportunity to remove the internal accomplices stored in the Russian Empire by European countries, including Britain, which made Alexander II vent his anger? What happened in the Ottoman Empire in the south made Alexander II jealous. If the Russian Empire had not tied up most of the Ottoman Empire's energy in the Balkan Peninsula, how could these countries take the opportunity to seize those important territories? However, although they were dissatisfied, they still had to face reality. In the Balkan Peninsula, the Russian Empire had begun to increase its military strength in the Balkan Peninsula because of the pacification of the domestic situation. However, it seems that these countries have reached many agreements with the Ottoman Empire in order to obtain the territory of the Ottoman Empire. The most common one is that they have reached an agreement with the Ottoman Empire to support the Ottoman Empire in the Balkan Peninsula to prevent the invasion of the Russian Empire. This is why the Ottoman Empire is willing to sell those territories this time, because this is the guarantee of the 7 major European powers of Britain, France, Prussia, Spain, the Netherlands, Italy, and Portugal. Is there a stronger promise than this? Although the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Empire expressed dissatisfaction with this afterwards, these countries were just trying to smooth things over with the Russian Empire and obviously would not give in. This time, even the Netherlands made a helpless diplomatic etiquette gesture to the Russian Empire. What else can St. Petersburg say about this? But it is definitely not okay to let Alexander II suffer easily, hunting while others eat the meat for free. So recently, after discussing with Gorchakov, Milyutin and others, he came to a conclusion that the war in the Balkan Peninsula should end here, because the Russian Empire currently does not have the capital to make enemies with all 7 countries. Although it is unwilling, this is the reality. However, if the Balkan Peninsula is not an option, it can be started from other places. Chapter 265. The scale of the war is still too small. Since the new British Prime Minister Clayton took over the position of Prime Minister from Viscount Palmerston, Britain seems to have begun to strategically shrink in the Middle East in disguise in the face of dissatisfaction from European countries, trying to shift its strategic focus to both sides of the Atlantic as soon as possible. However, due to the delay in the war in the Balkans and the lack of an armistice agreement between Britain and the Russian Empire, Britain currently has more than 30,000 British troops stationed in Bulgaria in the Balkans. This has led to Britain being caught in a dilemma, because Britain's retreat has caused it to have constant friction with its ally the Ottoman Empire in the eastern Mediterranean, which has damaged trust and widened the rift. With Britain's strategic contraction in the Balkans, the Ottoman Empire's foreign policy autonomy has become increasingly stronger, and it seems that it is facing a new round of pattern adjustments there. William IV's conflict with the Russian Empire and the Ottoman Empire shows that Britain hopes that both countries will suffer losses, so that Britain can more easily control the Ottoman Empire to maintain control over the Suez Canal, the Red Sea and even the eastern Mediterranean. But they were also afraid that the Ottoman Empire would be overly weakened by the Russian Empire, which would eventually benefit Italy, France, and Spain. In the end, Britain would have to send troops to support the rule and invest more resources in it. Britain should be very conflicted about this. William IV guessed that this was the reason why number 10 Downing Street and Buckingham Palace did not want to see the Ottoman Empire continue to fight. After all, at that time, both sides would suffer losses, and the recently rising Prussia and the covetous France would become the winners of the decline and the rise. Britain was also dragged down. In general, this is the dilemma facing Britain's current diplomacy. So this time Britain followed a trend and took the western part of Yemen, which was actually a shrewd move. It broke free from the shackles between Britain and the Ottoman Empire's allies, first took the benefits, and reduced the covenant to the minimum. After that, it could openly get out of the Balkan Peninsula pattern and return to the role of mediator that Britain is best at, becoming an offshore balancer that benefits both sides rather than a member of the frontline battle. However, the Netherlands and Prussia will not let Britain get away easily. This time, the Deputy Foreign Minister Nicholas Pearson sent by the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs went to the Kingdom of Prussia and was received by Bismarck. Many people thought that this was just a coordination made by the Netherlands to purchase territory on the Alep Peninsula. In fact, this was not the case. Although the tripartite pact between Prussia, the Netherlands and France had expired this year, the two countries still signed a unilateral treaty, among which the Strategic Cooperation Treaty became the core. Among them, the strategic defense against Britain, France and the Austro-Hungarian Empire was the biggest foundation for cooperation between the two countries. William IV thought of Bismarck's secret plan, and the Netherlands could be said to have sent timely rain, but the Netherlands could not do it too many times, otherwise the plan led by him to make a profit from the rise of Prussia would die. The Netherlands is still too small. Although the population development in the past few years has been beneficial to the Austrian War, the American War, and the Balkan War, the population migration has been deliberately guided by the Netherlands. The Netherlands has attracted many refugees to places such as Australia in the Far East. In general, the white population has exceeded 10 million, the local population remains at around 6 million, and the Far East is more than 5 million. If this year's plan is followed, 1 million people will immigrate to the local area, and the population will reach 6 million. This is a big project. After completion, the white population of Australia will exceed 3 million, and the population of East India will be more than 2 million. The island of New Guinea plus other South Pacific islands such as Hawaii will add up to more than 1 million people. You must know that at this time, the population of Denmark is only about 2.4 million, and Sweden and Norway are only about 6 million. Although it is due to overseas immigration, it also shows that the population loss in Sweden and Denmark in Northern Europe is serious. It is precisely aiming at this point that the Netherlands has tried its best to befriend these two countries. Many people think that they are just strategic allies that the Netherlands needs. In fact, William IV pays more attention to the high-quality immigrants of the two countries. Before the American War, these immigrants were originally able to flow to North America, but after the American Civil War, Australia and East India in the Far East became the priority choice. Although the Irish who are now breaking up with the British government still choose to immigrate to the United States as their first choice, the Far East has also become the third largest choice for Irish immigrants besides North America and the European continent because of the friendliness of the Irish there and the relationship between the Netherlands and the United States. In recent years, the number of Irish immigrants to the Far East and the Netherlands has exceeded 200,000, which is a large scale. Therefore, William IV was not prepared to really mediate a war with the United States. Instead, he was thinking about how to slow down the war and maximize the interests of the Netherlands, blocking the influx of international immigrants to the United States and diverting the flow of immigrants to the Netherlands. This is the most scarce thing for the Netherlands at present. As for territory, it is not the most scarce thing for the Netherlands at present. Of course, if it is a key area like the UAE this time, the Netherlands will not give up easily, and will strive for more. It still needs a planned plan to allow the Netherlands to avoid war as much as possible and gain an advantage. However, how to start it requires some consideration before it can be achieved. At present, there are 3 war flashpoints in the Netherlands: the Balkan Peninsula, the Uruguayan dispute in South America, and the north and south of the United States and North America. However, it seems that it has not yet spread to the European mainland, which is a pity. Thinking of this, he summoned Thorbecke and others to the palace to see if there was a hornet's nest that the Netherlands could stir up to sting other countries, especially France, Italy, Spain and other countries. The Netherlands did not want these countries to reap the benefits while it was developing. We have to drag them into the water and consume their national strength. On August 16, 1866, the British Times, which was close to the opposition Tory party, stated that since the Clayton government came to power, the Middle East was no longer the focus of Britain's diplomacy, which had cooled the relationship between Britain and the Ottoman Empire, and the disagreement on the Russian Empire became the latest signal of the damage to the relationship between the two countries. The newspaper stated that some analysts pointed out that Britain, out of its own considerations, had a cold response to the Ottoman Empire's request for Britain to support the Ottoman Empire's security policy against the Russian Empire, making the Ottoman Empire a Middle Eastern power that Britain had been striving for since the early 19th century, increasingly unfamiliar with Britain and had a dull relationship. The analysis also pointed out that Britain's many irresponsible practices in the Middle East this year have increased the insecurity of the Ottoman Empire. It is difficult to truly improve Britain's alliance with this Middle East hegemon just by the visit of British Foreign Secretary Russell, who has no basis, and then ask the Ottoman Empire to help safeguard Britain's interests there. The newspaper pointed out that this is a great waste of British diplomatic resources after nearly half a century. The ruling Whig Party is required to change this strategy and restore or even strengthen the alliance with the Ottoman Empire, and then continue to provide stronger protection for the protection of the Suez Canal, rather than the opposite. Chapter 266, The Arms Dealer Made a Fortune. 1866, the latest report of the Amsterdam Peace Research Institute, which has a global influence, was released on this day. Once it appeared, it was immediately reprinted by major newspapers around the world on the 17th. This report caused a huge sensation. The report pointed out that from the beginning of the wars in Europe and the United States to the present, whether it was the Prussian-Danish War or the Prussian-Austrian War a few years ago, or the African Colonial War, the Balkan Peninsula War, the North American War, etc., behind a series of wars, there are arms suppliers. The article also takes Britain as an example. Britain launched a war in southern Africa, and local arms suppliers immediately made a lot of money, but the dead soldiers were buried forever in the land of South Africa. With the end of the South African War, Britain entered a period of peace without war, but the arms dealers were naturally unwilling and dissatisfied with the loss of the arms market. Therefore, the arms dealers eventually provoked the war in the Balkan Peninsula and pushed the British cabinet to join the war in North America. There are these two places to fill the lost South African market. Even in Europe and the world, new markets are being developed by arms dealers in these countries. The report explains that it is promoting the formation of new wars. The author of the report, Robbio, the first researcher of the Institute, cited the war between the Ottoman Empire and the Russian Empire as the reason for Britain's participation in the war. It was not just because the Russian Empire invaded the Balkans that Britain's influence was compressed, and it was even worried that the Russian Empire would move south into the Mediterranean. The report pointed out that this was just a false proposition, because Constantinople was there to block the Russian Empire from moving south. Unless the Russian Empire really destroyed the Ottoman Empire with more than 20 million people, it would be difficult to imagine that the Russian Empire could enter the Mediterranean. Therefore, the result of the interweaving of many factors was mainly the geopolitical competition among the great powers, especially the struggle between Britain and the Russian Empire for influence in the Balkans, and behind this struggle, there were arms dealers. The British Navy was the protagonist of British arms dealers, but the army was naturally unwilling to play only a small role, so the arms dealers equipped by the army were the driving force behind this round of war. The experts in this report estimate that the annual global arms trade is close to £50 million, 1.25 billion Dutch guilders. The report said that in the past 5 years, referring to 1861 to 1865, Europe and America were still the main purchasers of weapons. The Ottoman Empire in the Near East and the Siamese Empire in the Far East were also good participants. Even the Persian Empire chose to join as a purchaser of weapons from time to time. The United States of America, the Confederate States of America, the Kingdom of Prussia, the British Empire, the Russian Empire, and the Austrian Empire, later the Austro-Hungarian Empire, became the world's 6 largest weapons purchasing countries and regions, including local manufacturing and self-purchase and imports from other countries. It even surpassed the French Empire, which ranks 7th without many wars. Then the Kingdom of the Netherlands, the Kingdom of Portugal, and the Ottoman Empire were 8th to 10th. From 11th to 20th were Argentina, the Kingdom of Spain, the Kingdom of Italy, the Kingdom of Denmark, the Kingdom of Sweden, the Empire of Brazil, the Kingdom of Siam, the Kingdom of Greece, Colombia, and Venezuela. After that, the 21st to 27th places are the Kingdom of Belgium, the Persian Empire, Burma, Paraguay, Chile, Ecuador, Japan and other countries. Yes, at this time, Japan had just begun to open up to the outside world, and was even learning the good foreign policy of the Kingdom of Siam, the predecessor of Thailand, Laos and Cambodia. It can be regarded as crossing the river by feeling the stones. However, what many people don't know is that with a Meiji restoration that is now being promoted, this now poor and conservative country has become unstoppable. In just half a century, it has become a powerful country in the Far East. After 1905, with the defeat of the Russian Empire in the Far East, it made a sensation in Europe and the United States and became a heavyweight player in the world hegemony. This is history and later. The top 6 countries that purchased weapons in the past 5 years accounted for 55% of the global weapons purchases. The 7th to the 10th place accounted for 13%, and the 17th place accounted for more than 25%. In terms of individual countries, because of the North-South Civil War in North America, the United States of America accounted for the most, accounting for 12%, and the Confederate States of America accounted for 8%. The arms trade accounts for 1/5 of the world's total. It is terrifying. The North and the South spent a total of £10 million a year and purchased £50 million of weapons in 5 years. Russman, the co-author of the latest report of the Amsterdam Peace Research Institute and the second senior researcher of the institute, said, "The European arena remains unchanged, but in addition to North America, South America has become a new hotspot. The countries in South America need to increase their military spending. Not a little bit, but a large increase. The countries there obviously realize that they need to face the instability of the surrounding situation like European countries, so they need to spend money to buy weapons to maintain their own security environment and intimidate other countries not to aim their ambitions at their own countries. Therefore, they need to buy a large number of weapons." In his view, the Balkan War made European countries change their defense stance. Not to mention other countries, even the Kingdom of Greece, which was previously known for its peace, also asked the Greek cabinet government to increase the purchase of weapons after the Balkan War to increase Greece's defense capabilities. This is the case with Greece, not to mention other countries. Denmark has increased its annual military expenditure by nearly 50% compared to before the Prussian-Danish War. The same is true for Portugal and Italy. South America saw this and was even more afraid that Europe would invade South America again, so they increased their military spending and sought self-protection. This backfired back on Europe. The major powers naturally would not let these small countries dominate and threaten themselves, not to mention that the major powers did have ambitions. These measures aroused the desire of various countries to buy arms, and arms became a hot commodity. Countries increased their defense spending and orders were flying everywhere. Therefore, the major countries also increased their budgets. Rabio, the first researcher of the Amsterdam Peace Research Institute, said, "This has brought a lot of business orders to arms dealers in various countries, and manufacturers of major military powers have rushed to grab orders from the world." And our Amsterdam Peace Research Institute added a project after discovering this situation last year, in 1865, that is, the major arms importers and exporters. He pointed out that this year, a list of arms importers and exporters was added. The largest arms importer and exporter from 1861 to 1865 was the Confederate States of America. Due to its economic strength and industrial capacity different from the North, it was able to manufacture weapons such as guns and warships. Most of the weapons used by the South in the Civil War were imported, with the UK accounting for the majority. According to the Institute, during this 5-year period, the UK purchased 70% of the total £20 million of military equipment used by the Confederate States of America, taking away £14 million of orders. Chapter 267, The Netherlands Arms Supply Chain Business. The report of the Amsterdam Peace Research Institute also pointed out that in addition to almost monopolizing the arms purchases of the Southern Confederacy during the Civil War, the Ottoman Empire ranked second. In the past 5 years, the Ottoman Empire also purchased more than £3 million of arms from the UK, with an average of more than £600,000 per year, of which warships accounted for the majority. The warships currently being built for the Ottoman Empire in London have a tonnage of more than 20,000 tons. The rest are other European countries such as Italy, Belgium, Chile, Denmark, Sweden and even the Russian Empire. which are all customers of British arms dealers. According to the tracking of the Amsterdam Peace Research Institute, the final calculated value shows that the main channels of British arms dealers in the past 5 years are government-to-government sales and direct overseas commercial sales by private contractors authorised by the British Cabinet government. The report pointed out that the UK sold more than £30 million of arms in the past 5 years. The second place is not France or Prussia, but surprisingly, it is the Netherlands. The report states that arms transfers and trade with the Netherlands Ministry of Defence are important tools of the Netherlands' foreign policy, and that the Netherlands has a wide range of arms targets, saying that the Netherlands has sold arms to its allies, including the Russian Empire, Argentina, Sweden, the United States of America, Colombia, Venezuela, Greece, Denmark, etc. If the recent signing of the steam battleship with the United States of America is successful, then the United States of America will rise from the 4th place in the Netherlands' arms sales to the first export destination. Even the Netherlands' annual arms sales this year will break the historical record. The report also lists the estimated value. In the past 5 years, the Russian Empire purchased more than £2 million of arms from the Netherlands, Argentina more than £1.7 million, Sweden more than £1.5 million, Colombia and Venezuela are not much different, both between £1 million, and the Kingdom of Siam is about £800,000. The remaining Greece and Denmark are both around £500,000, and the latter has only started to equip Dutch weapons in the past 2 years. In these 5 years, the Netherlands sold about £9 million of weapons. The third largest arms exporter is France, with £8 million, Prussia with £7 million. Prussia's arms sales range included other small countries before the unification of Germany, and the United States with £4.8 million. The report pointed out that when these countries sell, they will fully consider various factors such as politics, military, economy and end use. This report suddenly reveals the arms trade context around the world, which is very important for the situation analysis of various countries. So all countries are beginning to evaluate the military capabilities and potential of various countries, according to this report. And the Netherlands, for the first time in this report, became the second largest arms seller and suddenly became the focus of the world. Even in terms of military innovation potential, because the Netherlands became the third country with the ability and technology to manufacture steam battleships, and because it is the latest world-leading rifle firearms and other technologies, semi-automatic rifles were first noticed by various countries after they appeared in the Netherlands. In addition, the Netherlands has never lost in wars in South Africa, Mozambique, Congo and Angola in the past few years, and the Netherlands' strong industrial and technological capabilities, the world's leading per capita income economy and education capabilities have attracted the attention of the world. The report mentioned that the Netherlands' military equipment innovation ability ranked 4th, second only to Britain, France, and Prussia, and before the United States, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and the Russian Empire. With the analysis of the data in the report, it is convincing. The comprehensive military potential of the Netherlands was also ranked after the 5 major countries of Britain, France, the Russian Empire, Prussia, and the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and was tied for 6th place with Spain and the Ottoman Empire. Although opponents believe that it is a bit inflated, and the population is only half of that of Spain and other countries, those who agree believe that the Netherlands can actually be comparable to the Ottoman Empire. After all, a large population does not necessarily mean potential, and the Netherlands now has 20 million native Africans in the East Indies, so there is no shortage of population. Moreover, the Mongolian cavalry would not have conquered so many countries in Eurasia, and fought from Asia to Europe. The streets of the world are full of the significance of this report because of this report. For this reason, His Majesty King William IV of the Netherlands, in a speech to the Dutch Senate, asked the Dutch cabinet not only to establish overseas arms sales as an important goal of national security and foreign policy, but also to regard it as a major opportunity to promote innovation and create jobs. William IV also cited several wars as examples, pointing out that the development of British industry is inseparable from the military development technology triggered by the war, and then combined with civilian industry. The alliance politics is the original development basis for arms exports, which has brought prosperity to the British domestic military industry based on overseas arms sales. William IV also criticized a report of the Amsterdam Peace Research Institute, which said that since 1861, the top 5 military industrial enterprises in the world, except for the William Arms Company, a subsidiary of the Dutch William Group, which occupies the third place. The other top 4 are all in Britain, and even France has no share. For this reason, William IV also pointed out that the Dutch arms dealers should only focus on the domestic market, and should also learn from Britain to focus on overseas. The continued development of British military enterprises is closely related to the interaction between enterprises, government and parliament. According to the report, in the past 20 years, in order to influence the British defence policy so that the arms they manufacture can be used, the cost of lobbying Buckingham Palace and Downing Street in London alone has reached £1 million. These arms dealers also have lobbying groups in other countries to lobby for their arms business, with annual overseas lobbying fees exceeding £100,000. The political and business revolving door in British society is constantly promoting the development of the military industry. After stepping down, the bigwigs in the British Tory Party and Whig Party are directly employed by military enterprises. They use their connections and other resources to influence the foreign policy of the British government. While seeking business for these military enterprises, they also make a lot of money. Spink, a senior British official who has retired for many years and visited the Amsterdam Peace Research Institute, pointed out in the report that in the past few decades, the British military, industry, House of Commons and House of Lords complex have been linked to British newspapers, academia, and intelligence. The British Ministry of Defence has been led by these capitals, resulting in Britain's increasing dependence on defence spending. He warned that although it is very good for Britain to have a strong military industry at present, it is easy to go astray if it is for economic development, so he called on Britain to change direction and let the ship sail in the right direction. We can't repeat the path that Britain has taken in the Netherlands. This is wrong. The Netherlands must follow its own steps, rather than copying others. Of course, we must also learn the good things. William IV was in the Senate, looking at the senators below. Everyone had a solemn expression on his face. He said seriously, although the Netherlands has achieved some small results at present, we can be proud of it, but we can't be complacent. After all, above us in the Netherlands, there are still countries like Britain, France, Prussia, the Russian Empire, the Ottoman Empire, and even Spain. To be honest, it is difficult for us to defeat each other. This is why we need to judge the situation and grasp the direction for the Netherlands. When pursuing national interests, we need to clarify ourselves and understand the operations of others. Although William IV said this in the Senate, the military industry of William IV became the hotspot of various countries, especially those small countries in South America, because of this exposure. This was something William IV did not expect. Chapter 268, William IV's Telegram to the Queen. 1866. Buckingham Palace, London. Sitting in front of Queen Victoria were Clayton, who had been the British Prime Minister for nearly half a year, and Foreign Secretary Russell. The two came to Buckingham Palace for a routine weekly job review meeting. Unlike the previous two meetings, this meeting was full of pressure. To be precise, the Queen was very dissatisfied with the current diplomatic situation in the UK, so the pressure on the two can be imagined. At present, in the British political arena, although Queen Victoria's influence cannot directly determine who will be the British Prime Minister, because the latter is the result of elections. However, don't forget the Queen's absolute influence among the British people. As long as she spreads the word about who she supports and who she opposes, it can at least reduce the support rate of those she opposes, and nearly half of them will die prematurely. This is fatal to every candidate. Therefore, in the British political arena, no one dares to take the Queen's attitude lightly. Clayton's one-year term as the successor Prime Minister is about to end. If he expects to get the Queen's support in the next Prime Minister election, then running to Buckingham Palace more often can get more support from the Queen. This was the suggestion that Viscount Palmerston made to Viscount Clayton before his death, and the latter also adopted it. Queen Victoria frowned and asked, "Why is this report so detailed?" She was talking about the Amsterdam Peace Research Institute report, which was published every 6 months. In recent years, every time she looked at the report, she couldn't help but feel dissatisfied. Why? She found that the introduction of Britain in this report was so detailed that it was almost as accurate as the report of the British Ministry of Defence. As the Queen of the United Kingdom for more than 20 years, she had a lot of experience in ruling, so she naturally understood the interests involved. Therefore, she couldn't help but feel uneasy and dissatisfied that the intelligence of the British Ministry of Defence was so thoroughly understood. Sure enough, Clayton and Russell looked at each other, Obviously they had expected the Queen to care about this issue. That's right, when they first saw this report, they even thought that this report was completed with the participation of senior officials of the British Ministry of Defence. But after investigation, they found that this was not the case. Therefore, the two were shocked by the intelligence capabilities of the Amsterdam Peace Research Institute in the Netherlands. Cleyston calmed down and replied, "Your Majesty, this organization has put a lot of effort in this regard. I suspect that they have received funding from the Dutch government and participated in the collection of intelligence in the foreign ministries of various countries. In addition, there are also teams from the private sector participating in this time, so it is so detailed." Queen Victoria was not satisfied with this answer, but she did not intend to hold Cleyston responsible for this. After all, this guy in front of her has only been in charge of 10 Downing Street for half a year, and the report is almost 10 years old. Can we create a similar report? Seeing that Russell and Cleyston hesitated, Queen Victoria seemed to see through Cleyston and Russell's thoughts and said, "The Whigs can have their own copy, and the Tories don't have to worry about it. As for the Foundation, I think you can cooperate with the Financial Times and the London Times. After all, collecting information is their strong point." Russell and Cleyston's eyes lit up, and they thought the Queen's idea was good. When it comes to collecting information, who can compare with professional newspapers? They have complete channels for collecting information. If the mysterious intelligence information of the military MI6 is combined, it is very likely that an organization similar to the Amsterdam Peace Research Institute will emerge. Thinking of this, I can't help but admire the Queen. Queen Victoria, however, was a little disappointed with the Whig Party. These are actually all the information collected by her British Royal Intelligence Agency. In fact, she ordered the Royal Intelligence Agency to track this organization a few years ago. Therefore, she has figured out the chakra composition of this organization. At the beginning, she even thought about establishing this organization. At that time, domestic arms dealers were dissatisfied because they were afraid of leaking their information to the British cabinet government and making their company's secrets public, which was very unfavorable to the company. Therefore, even a strong man like Viscount Palmerston could only give up. Now this comprehensive report from the Netherlands has made the British arms giant speechless and difficult to refuse, so she brought up this issue again. She even promised the Whig Party benefits, and the two of them agreed. The selfishness of the Whig Party and the Tory Party can be seen. Queen Victoria pondered secretly, the Netherlands is not strong enough because other powers are relatively less vigilant against it, but the Netherlands is not weak, because other powers have given the Netherlands a certain respect. The Balkan Peninsula and the American Civil War are still ongoing, and the 5 people can accurately judge when it will end. Since the American Civil War in North America, William IV of the Netherlands has telegraphed and talked to Queen Victoria several times. William IV expressed to Queen Victoria that the interests of the Netherlands in the United States of America may be affected by the war. He expressed his concern and suggested that Queen Victoria and the Lincoln government of the United States of America have direct dialogue. William IV also said that he could serve as a mediator between the federal government of the United States of America and the British and Southern Confederate governments to promote direct dialogue between the 3 parties. William IV also said that the Netherlands is even willing to maintain friendly relations with Britain, the Ottoman Empire and Tsarist Russia, and help Britain and the Ottoman Empire to dialogue with the Tsarist Russia in the Balkan Peninsula War, and act as a mediator in the Balkan Peninsula under certain conditions. Conditional? Queen Victoria thought that the young king had expressed to her this condition within a condition, which was that he wanted Britain to recognize the legalization of the Dutch arms business, recognize the existence of the Dutch arms business, and not maliciously suppress the other party. But she actually refused at the time. After all, Britain's arms business is the best in the world. Britain will naturally not tie its own hands. Britain wants to enjoy it alone. However, she did not expect that the Netherlands would break into a world in the past few years, and even the share, in just over 5 years, from only focusing on South American Venezuela, Colombia and other countries that are less than 1/10 of Britain, to occupying the arms share of other countries such as Argentina, the United States of America, the Russian Empire, Sweden, etc., reaching more than 30% of the current British foreign trade arms business, and looking at the current situation, there will even be a trend of large-scale development in the future. Just yesterday, William IV sent her another telegram. This little guy even asked her hypocritically whether the Netherlands' sale of steam battleships to the United States of America would break the current balance of naval power among countries. Wars around the world have shrunk the sales channels of British industrial products. British industrial products have piled up in London. Especially when the Russian Empire, the Kingdom of Sweden and other countries were dissatisfied with Britain, they consciously rejected British industrial manufacturing. The deterioration of relations with the United States and the United States has made British industrial products lose a market of 23 million people. The Ottoman Empire has recently threatened to increase tariffs on British industrial products from time to time, causing British industrial products to increase prices in disguise, making British industrial products less competitive than similar goods from France, Prussia, the Netherlands and the United States. If these continue, the challenges of Britain's economic development will be even more severe. This is Britain's dilemma. Chapter 269 The Netherlands' enviable international status. When Queen Victoria was thinking about the international status of the Netherlands, other countries also began to evaluate the status of the Netherlands. Compared with the dilemma of the United Kingdom, the situation of the Netherlands is envied by all countries. Why can the Netherlands be so comfortable and have a good relationship with both sides in many wars? There are two main reasons. One is the Netherlands is just right national strength. Since 1857, the Netherlands has begun to carry out various reforms, and the Netherlands has gone from being a low-end country among Spain, Sweden, Portugal, Denmark, and the United States to a country that seems to be stronger than Spain now. Don't doubt it, at least Queen Victoria thinks so. The Netherlands has always been very confident in its own strength and development, but it also recognizes its own shortcomings. Sometimes it considers itself a medium-sized country, but sometimes it is basically regarded by the international community as one of the major powers, but not a major power comparable to Britain, France, Prussia, the Russian Empire, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the Ottoman Empire, etc. The Netherlands' insufficient national comprehensive strength makes other countries relatively less vigilant against it, but its not weak national strength and huge development potential make other countries give the Netherlands a certain respect. The wars in which the great powers participate will gradually increase the fairness of the great powers, and the mutual suspicion between the great powers makes everyone doubt whether the other party can exist as a mediator. The good relations between the Netherlands and all parties at the same time, as well as the suspicion and sensitivity of European and American countries, make it difficult for countries such as Britain and France to convince each other. For example, in the American Civil War, even France could not convince the parties involved, the American federal states in the north and the Confederacy in the south, because France is currently waging a war in Mexico in the south. Although the Russian Empire did not participate in the war with the United States, Britain and the Russian Empire were not suitable to exist as international mediators because of their status as belligerents in the Balkan Peninsula. Prussia could have done it, and Bismarck's national diplomatic ability was also good, but Bismarck launched the Prussian-Danish War in the Prussian-Austrian War, and even drove Austria out of the German Confederation and annexed the entire Germany, which damaged the image of Prussia. Many people can see that it will be difficult for Berlin to eliminate this influence for at least 5 years. Spain, Portugal and Italy are located in the southern edge of Europe, not in the core of Europe, which is hard to convince people. Vienna of the Austro-Hungarian Empire could have been, but Joseph I was conceited and did not want to cause trouble again. He chose to develop in a low-key manner and wait for the future to show his strength, which seemed unsuitable. In the end, Queen Victoria found that the Netherlands, which was located in a country surrounded by 4 warring countries, was surrounded by the 4 major countries of Britain, France, Prussia, and Russia. It also made good friends with the Russian Empire and used the German summit to improve its relations with the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Now it is taking advantage of the hostility between Britain and the Ottoman Empire to further develop its relations with the Ottoman Empire. With all these, the Netherlands has miraculously almost made friends with Europe. It seems that except for Portugal, the defense of various countries against Britain now seems to have further increased the pressure on Britain's economic growth with the accumulation of industrial products. Britain's hostility with the United States and its good relationship with the Confederacy of the South, the sensitivity of both sides, made Britain face the Netherlands' claim of mediating as a peacemaker, which made Britain in a dilemma. If the United Kingdom clearly abandons its support for the Confederacy, it will not only be criticized by the Confederacy, but also condemned by public opinion in the United Kingdom. At the same time, The strategic cooperation between the United Kingdom and the Confederacy will be damaged. If the United Kingdom continues to support the Confederacy against the Northern Confederacy, it will continue to be difficult for the United Kingdom to enter the market of the Northern Confederacy. At the same time, the United Kingdom will continue to have some of its energy pulled in North America, making it difficult to take into account Europe and the Middle East. Against the backdrop of the intensifying strategic competition between Britain, France and the Russian Empire, France continues to use the Balkan Peninsula to alienate Britain and the Russian Empire. But in the same way, the Netherlands is also taking advantage of France's sensitivity in the Balkan Peninsula and the Americas to increase France's international moral pressure in order to benefit the Netherlands. These are the advantages of the Netherlands. The second is that the Netherlands is relatively easy to be accepted by countries around the world. In terms of economy, the Netherlands has a relatively advanced level of technological development. Since the country is not strong, it is a natural sense of closeness for all countries. After all, compared with the three major technological powers such as Britain, France and Prussia, the Netherlands' cooperation is more equal and easier to negotiate. Moreover, the Netherlands is less imposing than others. The country of William IV of the Netherlands regards itself as a medium-sized country, which makes other countries feel more friendly. In terms of system, because the two countries were once the United Kingdom ruled by one king together with the United Kingdom, it is similar to the United Kingdom. The Netherlands was once invaded by Napoleon I, so many French systems were also applied in the Netherlands. It was not until 1815 that the Nassau-Orange family ruled, and the latter was a member of the German Confederation. The Netherlands combines the characteristics of the three countries of Britain, France, and Prussia, Germany, so not only these three countries find it difficult to deny the national governance policy of the Netherlands, but even other countries also very much agree with the practice of the Netherlands to use what is useful. Therefore, it is understandable that the Dutch system is praised by various countries. Culturally, the Protestantism of the Netherlands is recognized by various countries, and there are more than 10% Catholics in the Netherlands, which is more tolerant than other Germanic countries. Therefore, the Netherlands is also considered by Southern European countries to be a country that does not dislike them. This is also why when William IV proposed that William II should inherit the Greek king, the Greeks, who believed in the Orthodox Church, were not very opposed to it. After all, an inclusive Dutch royal family was more acceptable to them than the purely Catholic royal family of the Kingdom of Bavaria. The relationship between the Netherlands and Tsarist Russia was friendly and stable. Since the 17th century, the relationship between the Netherlands and Tsarist Russia was the most stable, friendly and lasting among the bilateral relations between the Netherlands and all major powers. The Russian Empire was the largest weapons sales market in the Netherlands, which was the most dependent market for Dutch weapons. The Russian Empire also had access to the most advanced weapons technology in Western Europe, and the Netherlands' help was indispensable. There was no geopolitical contradiction between the Netherlands and the Russian Empire, and the economic and trade relations between the two countries were also a great help. In addition, the two countries had close and in-depth cooperation in European and international politics and military fields. In the latest Balkan Peninsula War this year, although the Netherlands did not participate in the war to help the Russian Empire, the Dutch arms factory stepped up its efforts to increase production progress and continuously provided high-quality weapons for the Russian Empire's war. It can be said that without the weapons of the Netherlands, the Russian Empire would have been absolutely unable to withstand the joint actions of the British-Austrian Empire and the Ottoman Empire in the Balkan Peninsula, and eventually outlasted the Austrian Empire to become the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and then outlasted Britain's current retreat, and the Ottoman Empire began to reluctantly agree that it was time to cease fire. It can be said that the Netherlands is a paramilitary ally of the Russian Empire, and this name is not an exaggeration. Chapter 270 We Are All Irish. United States of America, Washington, White House Office. Today, President Lincoln is looking at the report of the Amsterdam Peace Institute with envy. This is the document he has come into contact with the most in recent years. There is only one person around Lincoln, and that person is Secretary of the Interior Washburn. In contrast, the Netherlands' play with both sides this time is just right. Although the African wars that have occurred in recent years have made it difficult for the Netherlands to continue to exist in South Africa, where the Netherlands has been operating for hundreds of years, the Thorbecke government even faced impeachment by the opposition Christian Party at home, but in the end, the Liberals held a majority in the House of Representatives and it was not passed. Since then, The Thorbecke cabinet government has become stronger and more united. Mr. President, although the Netherlands compromised with Britain in South Africa, they gained British recognition in Congo, Tanzania, Kenya, Madagascar and other places. Later, they relied on the war with Portugal to obtain northern Angola and northern Mozambique. Almost the entire Central Africa belongs to them. Australia was transferred to the Netherlands by Britain and became their foundation. Now the Netherlands has completely possessed the depth of a great power. The United States of America should not be hostile to them at present. The Lincoln government raised its head and looked at the report, pouting slightly, squinting its eyes, and said as if it was pointing something, "You have a close relationship with Amsterdam. Do you think the Netherlands will support us in completely taking over the Confederate States of America in the South?" Tell the truth, Washburn's whole body was shocked. He looked up carefully at Lincoln. There seemed to be no malice in the other's eyes. But for some reason, Washburn's heart was trembling slightly, and he felt a little uneasy. Could it be that he had been discovered? But recently, he tried to have less contact with people from the Netherlands. Could something have gone wrong? His mind turned instantly, and he pretended to be calm, saying, "The Netherlands has always put interests first, and the interests of the United States and the Netherlands have been complementary over the years, and it seems that there has been no change at present. The Confederate States of the South is almost tied to Britain, and it is difficult for the Netherlands to gain benefits. Therefore, I feel that the Netherlands is still sincere about making friends with us, but if it makes enemies with Britain or even goes to war for us, then the Netherlands does not seem to be very reliable." Lincoln hummed, nodded slightly, and smiled unchanged, saying, "In other words, the Netherlands should not support us in conquering the Davis government in the South." Washburn said, "It should be like this." Lincoln blinked more and more times, and after a long time, he sighed, "Is the great United States going to be divided in my hands, which makes me a sinner in American history?" When he thought of the historical books of later generations that President Lincoln had become the historical scandal of the United States being divided into two, he was unwilling to accept it. This is a person who is about to achieve success and fame, but he made a mistake at the last moment. No, he didn't want to be such a person who was nailed to the pillar of history and whipped. He wanted to make a change. He stared at Washburn for a long time with extremely sharp eyes. The latter couldn't help but gather his body and lean back slightly. It was obvious that he was stunned by Lincoln's expression. Lincoln put enough pressure on the other party before retracting his momentum. He smiled and said, "Since you said so, it seems that the Netherlands really doesn't want to intervene in this matter, but it doesn't matter. Tell me, if we go to war with British Columbia where Vancouver is located, will Britain be furious?" "What?" Washburn's heart skipped a beat. President Lincoln wanted to attack British Columbia, the Western Territory of Canada? Well, yes. A few days ago, Secretary of State Seward talked to me and thought it was feasible. He even thought that since Britain had expressed its support for the Confederacy, it was because of the support from the English. However, Vancouver is the best and most excellent port in Western Canada. It is located between the south of Alaska and Alexander Islands and the north of the United States of America. Vancouver's location is not good for Britain, because most of the people there are Native Americans. Compared with the Confederacy, there are actually less than 100,000 English people. Therefore, as long as we don't carry out actions such as massacres against them and use them to threaten the other party, we can even ask Britain to use British Columbia to appease us on the issue of the Confederacy and let us recognize the independence of the South. It is not impossible. We can even go a step further. Not only British Columbia, but also Alberta and Saskatchewan to the east can be taken, which can be used to stabilize the dissatisfaction of the progressives in the country. Seward's proposal? This guy has been getting more and more crazy recently. Obviously, the forces behind him are hungry and anxious recently. Especially when the report of the Amsterdam Peace Research Institute came out, the United States was only the fifth arms exporter. They seemed to be excited. When Washburn thought of the American military-industrial giant represented by this guy, it was really possible. This is a good idea, but I'm afraid that if those people in Buckingham Palace and Downing Street explode, we will be in a difficult situation. Lincoln said, "Ha, difficult situation. 66 years ago, my father and mother were under extreme oppression after Ireland was invaded by England. Like everyone else, they fled Ireland to North America in the early 19th century and lived a displaced life. Finally, they made a living by farming and hunting in Hardin County, Kentucky. and your family emigrated to Maine from Ireland in your grandfather's generation. Your father is even more amazing. He actually trained 4 senators. He can be called a model father in the United States. Finally, you and I met in Illinois. That year, you became my secretary when I ran for Illinois Congress. When I left the Whig Party in 1856 to join the Republican Party, you followed me. Lincoln said to Washburn sincerely. Finally, when I ran for president for the first time on behalf of the Republican Party in 1860, you gave me advice. In the end, you played an indispensable role in my victory. And we are both great Irish. You know, when we face the English, we only have hatred. Therefore, we must stop the greed of the English. And the best way to stop them is to fight violence with violence. So Seward's strategy is good. Since the Confederacy of the South is so firmly valued by Britain at present, we will slow down first. We will start from the north. We want to drive the English out of North America and make North America a new home for the Irish. Don't the English like the island of Ireland? Just take it, and let their Canada taste us. Washburn fell silent when he heard this. Lincoln's father was a pure Irishman, but his mother was a Scottish Celt, so they were actually from the same clan. Therefore, he could be considered a pure Irishman. This was also the reason why the relationship between the two was so close and remained unchanged over the years. Building a strong Ireland was their common wish. Lincoln said, "I know that the Dutch have a good relationship with you, and this is a good connection. If Ireland wants to be strong, it must have certain support. Therefore, the support of the Netherlands is a good opportunity for us. You have to grasp the degree of the Netherlands line. If necessary, you can make certain concessions. For example, this time the Netherlands is discussing with us about the steam battleship, you can lobby privately. In this way, the chances are greater, and the United States is willing to compensate the Netherlands in other places." Washburn looked up at Lincoln, as if talking about compensation. Lincoln thought for a while, and said, "For example, the United States allows the Dutch to have more investment limits in the far east of the Netherlands. You know, William IV attaches great importance to this." Washburn heard this, and his eyes suddenly lit up. It was true. In this way, he was more confident in pulling the strings with the Netherlands. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 271, Politics is like chess. The better the chess, the better the victory. Prussia, Berlin. All major powers hope that the North American Civil War will end as soon as possible. Although the relationship between the United States and the Confederate States of America has become more tense after the outbreak of the war, and Britain can better influence the situation in North America, the long-term conflict between the North and South of America has caused the purchasing power of the Confederate States of America to gradually decline, which will increase the resistance to Britain's economic recovery. Despite this, it is impossible for Britain to lower its posture and ask the United States of America, which has the upper hand, to end its attack. Therefore, for Britain, the Netherlands' support for the Northern Confederation of America has secretly disappointed and even angered Britain. Britain hopes that the Netherlands will join the sanctions against the Northern Confederation of America and prohibit the sale of weapons to the Confederation of America. Britain even hoped that the Netherlands would cut off its long-term friendly relationship with Tsarist Russia, but it is well aware of the historical origins and current situation of the relationship between the Netherlands and the Tsarist Russian Empire, so Britain finally gave up. In the Prussian royal palace, sitting opposite Bismarck was William I, and next to him were General Moltke, Crown Prince Frederick, and the 7-year-old grandson William. Prince William could not help but ask hurriedly, "Why is Britain still hesitating to win over the Netherlands until now? Is the position of the Netherlands really that important and irreplaceable?" Bismarck took a deep breath, then said calmly, "In order to balance France, Britain won over the Russian Empire and the Austrian Empire. After the dynasty established by Napoleon I was defeated, Britain was worried that the Russian Empire and the Austrian Empire were too close on the European continent. The Union would threaten Britain's interests on the European continent. So, in order to break the Austrian Empire's dominance in the German Confederation, Britain supported Prussia, which was unwilling to be small in the German Confederation." William I glanced at his grandson, then sighed. Everyone should know how frequently Britain gave economic transfusions to Prussia. In the end, We rose with our strong military policy and became a stable country comparable to Austria. In 1850, we Prussia wanted to establish an alliance to unite the northern German states to make Prussia stronger, but this caused panic in the Austrian Empire and the Russian Empire. Austria and Russia were afraid that Prussia would grow stronger and dominate the affairs of the German Confederation, so they put pressure on Prussia. Although Britain supported it behind the scenes, the Russian Empire was persuaded by Joseph I of Austria and eventually deployed 100,000 troops on the Polish border between the two countries. Prussia finally compromised and temporarily put aside the plan to unify northern Germany. It was forced to sign the Treaty of Olmütz, which was a loss of power to the Russian state. Prussia was forced to continue to recognize that the dominant country in the German Confederation was still the Austrian Empire. Little William continued to ask, in this case, why didn't Britain continue to support Prussia? Instead, it is now at odds with Prussia. William I looked at Little William's curious eyes lovingly, and he explained, because Prussia is strong. Little William, isn't this what Britain wants to see? Bismarck looked at the second heir to the throne of the Kingdom of Prussia and explained, Your Highness, people have grown up and need to separate. Prussia, which is supported by Britain, has become strong, and it is time for it to conflict with Britain. Prussia has become strong and threatens Britain's interests. The British are timid and they are afraid of the rise of any country that threatens them. Therefore, they are supporting other countries again, and the Netherlands is the latest target of Britain's support. Although it is not clear that the Netherlands has gained any substantial benefits from Britain's support, it is undeniable that Britain has always been very tolerant of the Netherlands in its policies. Therefore, the wall of the Netherlands that blocks Prussia has been used. Little William said with an unhappy face, the British are too bad. He completely forgot that his mother, Princess Victoria, the wife of Crown Prince Frederick next to him, and the current Crown Princess of Prussia is a real British, and is also the eldest princess of Queen Victoria of Britain. Crown Prince Frederick looked at his son and opened his mouth. In the end, he chose to remain silent. Paris, France. Emperor Napoleon III and Prime Minister Olivier were also discussing this matter. The Netherlands is a key part of Britain's Central European strategy to contain Prussia. Once the policy towards the Netherlands is too harsh or the relationship becomes hostile, the Netherlands is very likely to completely turn to the Prussian-Dutch alliance strategically and no longer care about Britain's feelings. Your Majesty is right. Britain will not push the Netherlands to Prussia casually, and the Netherlands will not easily turn to Prussia unless it is absolutely necessary. The Netherlands is already worried about having a behemoth, France, around them. If they are too close to Prussia, it will not be good for the Netherlands, but it will be bad. After all, being too close to Prussia will offend Britain, France, Austria-Hungary, and even the Russian Empire will doubt the autonomy of the Netherlands. The Netherlands ally Denmark is even more dissatisfied because Prussia has just taken away Schleswig and Holstein. At this time, if the Netherlands is too close to Prussia, not to mention the Danish royal family, even the civilians will be very disgusted, and the same is true for Sweden. Therefore, the Netherlands' neutrality at this time is an opportunity for its rise. The Netherlands has the economic motivation to mediate these national conflicts. At the same time, the Dutch act as important mediators of international conflicts, which is conducive to establishing a good international reputation for their country, enhancing their international influence, and building their status as a major world power. Napoleon III agreed with this and said, "The Hague Tribunal recently established by the Netherlands is probably built for this purpose." William IV has been planning for a long time and even created a crisis to get countries to join this organization. Olivier smiled bitterly and said, "Yes, with Argentina, Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador and other countries having submitted applications, the number of members of the Hague International Court has exceeded 2 digits, which is more than half for the countries in Europe and the United States. If the Netherlands can link the judicial departments of these countries together, it will have a great influence on all countries in the future. Your Majesty, France has to guard against this move of William IV. Amsterdam, the Netherlands." William IV sneezed suddenly. He guessed that someone must have mentioned him, and it was transnational. Thinking of transnationalism, he thought of today's international political game. This international political game is like playing chess. It needs to be stable, and every move needs to be meaningful. This is the case with William IV now. Many people do not understand that every move he makes contains many pitfalls, yes, pits dug for various countries. Britain hopes to end the war in the Balkans, but the Russian Empire does not buy it, and the same is true for the Ottoman Empire. Facing the tough Russian Empire, the two countries have to continue to maintain a state of war, which is difficult to lose face. Why is Tsarist Russia so confident? In fact, in addition to the people of Tsarist Russia, it is because Tsarist Russia also has weapons made in the Netherlands and firearms and ammunition produced by factories built by the Netherlands in the Russian Empire. The longer the war between Tsarist Russia and Britain and Austria lasts, the higher the price they pay, especially the economies of the three countries, and the Russian Empire's economy will be more dependent on Dutch capital and arms. Don't say that the Russian Empire produces and designs itself. If it can, there will be no weapons of the Russian Empire soldiers. They have always been mid- and lower-level European technology. Therefore, the Russian Empire has always been hungry for Dutch weapons. The historical origins between the Netherlands and Tsarist Russia and the regular meeting mechanism of foreign ministers have never stopped in the 5 years since William IV inherited the throne. Therefore, the strategic cooperation partner and quasi-alliance relationship between the two countries has caused great headaches for Britain. Even Britain is afraid that if the Netherlands, Prussia, and Tsarist Russia sign a treaty, it will further exploit Britain's leadership. William IV is well aware of the value of the Netherlands in Britain's European strategy, so he is so unscrupulous. Even when facing France, it is the same, because France, like Prussia, is now unwilling to lose this not-so-weak buffer state and slow down the struggle between France and Prussia. These are also the reasons why various countries did not mention the Netherlands' second place in this arms deal, but instead expressed dissatisfaction with Britain's £30 million of arms sales. The Netherlands' arms are now basically stable. Even if they increase, they will only increase in technology. After continued innovation, the countries will upgrade, and then the Netherlands' orders will increase on a large scale. These are all for the army, but the navy. William IV's eyes lit up. The navy was the biggest money-making arms machine in the 19th and even 20th centuries. A battleship costs more than £10,000, and that is a sailing battleship, but a steam battleship is not painful, because steam battleships are almost all ironclad. Altogether, the previous 6 and sailing battleships only cost more than £10,000, then the steam ironclad battleships need to be increased by at least 3 times. That is £30,000, and a level 1 steam battleship costs £300,000, which is a huge burden for many countries. But for South American countries like Argentina, which have abundant grain harvests and minerals, they can be slaughtered. After all, South America is not the forgotten corner of the future. The current South American countries just defeated Spain and other European countries more than 10 years ago and completed the War of Independence. After 50 years of development, they all pay great attention to strengthening the military. Therefore, even Britain, France, Spain and other countries are unwilling to provoke them easily, but just want to instigate internal strife. However, the military modernization of each country is serious. Paraguay is on good terms with France and is now equipped with a large number of the latest French weapons. This is also the reason why they were able to defeat the Brazilian army equipped with Portuguese weapons in the early stage of the invasion of Brazil. Argentina is the most complicated. The weapons of the United States, Britain, and the Netherlands are all prevalent in the Argentine army, which can be said to be dazzling. Chapter 272 New Opportunity in North America? The Netherlands must use clever means to take away the arms business of various countries from them, which will trigger the desire of various countries to buy weapons. When various countries increase their arms purchases in an unstable situation, the Dutch arms dealers will have a steady stream of orders. At that time, the Netherlands will be more affordable, so it will not cost a single soldier to perfectly achieve the goal of exporting a large number of weapons. The Netherlands can even make these countries more united around the Netherlands on the issue of the South American alliance. The war will promote these countries to unite more around the Netherlands. Venezuela and Colombia, which were originally disunited, will naturally follow the weapons of the Netherlands and become a gun under the command of the Netherlands. As long as these countries in South America are stable, they can start planning to deal with Chile and New Zealand, Britain's allies. As long as they are taken down, the Netherlands' century-long dominance in the South Pacific will be completed. The thought of the South Pacific being under the rule of the Netherlands, and then the Netherlands becoming the hegemon there, will be the backing for the Netherlands to enter the status of a global power in the future. So many people don't understand why the Netherlands is so enthusiastic about South America, and that's why. In fact, according to the historical process, The American Civil War would have ended in 1866, and the Lincoln government would have defeated the South and agreed to the United States to end it. However, under the operation of William IV in this life, this situation has almost broken down. Because of the Civil War, the United States was divided into two. The comprehensive potential has been reduced a lot, and there is no longer the natural environment that was unique and dominated North America in the previous life. Canada in the north and the hostile Confederacy in the south, plus Mexico, as well as Alaska and Alexander II of the Netherlands, have complicated the situation in North America. Although the United States still took over the coastal areas of California and Washington, they lost the territory of the Southern Alliance and still lost some economic development potential, especially the 9.1 million people in the South, which is almost a third less. There are also the future largest oil storage areas in the United States, such as Texas and Florida, the treasure land of the Gulf of Mexico. It can be said that the economic development potential will also be reduced a lot, not to mention that the capital of the Southern Confederacy is built in Richmond, Virginia. It borders Maryland, where Washington, the capital of the Northern Confederation, is located, and is located on the north and south of the Chesapeake Bay. This narrows the strategic depth of the American Confederation in the north. Looking at the map, the scope of rule becomes shorter from north to south and longer from east to west. If Canada in the north or the Confederacy in the south attacks it together, it would be easy for the Confederation to be cut off. The Atlantic coastal area is occupied by the South, and the North has the remaining one-third, which makes the Navy of the North hesitant to use it. Therefore, William IV found that if the American Confederation wanted to develop its economy according to this map, it would be difficult to make a breakthrough in the Atlantic direction. After all, their Atlantic economy has entered the ranks of developed European countries, and if they want to improve again, they can only do so in the Midwest, and the coastal areas of the West are their future focus. If that happens, it is inevitable that the United States will have a heavier economic presence in the West, and the development of the West will be on the agenda of the Lincoln government after the stabilization. By then, the economic interests of the United States will inevitably be more closely connected with the Netherlands, and the strategic location of the Hawaiian Islands will be extremely critical, and may even become a point of conflict between the two countries. Moreover, in the domestic market of the Far Eastern power, the United States will be more deeply involved at that time, which will be a great challenge for the industrial products of the Netherlands. Therefore, the war there cannot be stopped in the short term. William IV thought of this and began to think about how to continue this war and not stop. Thinking of this, his eyes fell on the row of safes in his private office, and his eyes fell on the word United States. Suddenly, he remembered that Washburn wrote a few days ago saying that the Lincoln government requested the Netherlands to increase arms exports and hinted that the United States was very eager for the Dutch steam battleships. The words showed that they wanted to purchase this new battleship from the Netherlands. Apparently, the Americans themselves did not think that the war would end quickly. Just as William IV was thinking, one of his intelligence chiefs, Mackay Sean, knocked on the door and interrupted him. William IV then quickly saw the manager of the Dutch International Intelligence walking in with a serious face. "What's the matter?" William IV knew that the matter should be serious, because Mackay Sean's face was very serious. Mackay Sean said, "Your Majesty, the latest news from North America is that the United States has assembled 50,000 soldiers in Salt Lake City, the capital of Utah. The Confederate States of the South believes that the North is going to attack Arizona, which has just joined the South, so it is assembling 30,000 troops. Now both sides seem to be on the verge of breaking out. 50,000 Northern troops and 30,000 Southern troops." William IV was curious why Mackay Sean's face was so serious if that was all. He stared at Mackay Sean with some confusion. "Is there something strange inside?" "As expected of our great Majesty." Mackay Sean flattered him quietly and said seriously, "Our people sent back news that the northern United States not only has 50,000 troops in Salt Lake City, but the Lincoln government also ordered General Grant to send another 30,000 troops to follow these 50,000 troops and arrived in Idaho in the north of Utah." Idaho. William IV frowned and came to the wall next to him. In addition to looking at the map, the entire wall was almost covered with the maps of countries around the world. Of course, there were also equally simple maps of each continent. His eyes fell on North America and the United States. He first found Arizona, the westernmost part of the current territory of the Southern Confederacy, and then found Salt Lake City in Utah to its north. Finally, he looked up and saw it, and his eyes were placed on Idaho. Inadvertently, he looked to its north. His eyes narrowed immediately, as if he had discovered something. He turned around and stared at Mackay Sean. Under William IV's gaze, Mackay Sean said, "Our people speculate that the goal of the United States of America this time is to steal the dragon and change the phoenix, and prepare to attack the east and attack the west. The target is not Arizona, but to prepare to take these 30,000 soldiers all the way north to Spokane, Washington, and then prepare to attack the British territory of Canada in the north and take over British Columbia in the west." Is the news accurate? It was almost the same as what he guessed. Although William IV didn't understand why the Lincoln government was so bold all of a sudden, it didn't prevent William IV from starting to plan what benefits the Netherlands could get from it. This news was revealed by the Secretary of the Deputy General Andrew Johnson. It was his words, which were correct. But obviously, Washburn didn't remind him, which was worth William IV's deep thought. As expected, the ancients were not deceiving me. Those who are not of my race must have different hearts. Andrew Johnson, the Vice President of the United States of America, was of Dutch descent, while Washburn and Lincoln were of Irish descent, and Seward was of German descent. Secretary of the Treasury James Speed was also of Dutch descent, and Secretary of War Edwin Stanton was of German descent. In Lincoln's cabinet, the Irish had the greatest influence, the Dutch were second, and the third was the Germans. This was related to the national conditions of the United States of America, because in the United States of America, the most taboo was the influence of European powers in America. The Monroe Doctrine was originally established to cut off this, and it was even extended to South America. Therefore, this three-party is a balanced circle. Chapter 273 American Diplomatic League Incident 1866, the United States asked Britain to withdraw its troops in support of the Confederacy, but London ignored it. On September 1, 1866, Edwin Stanton, Secretary of War of the United States, visited St. Petersburg, Russia, and was received by Emperor Alexander II. He then held talks with Milyutin, Minister of the Russian Army. Russia then announced its support for the United States' opposition to Britain's participation in the American Civil War, and explicitly demanded that His Majesty withdraw from the Confederacy. The British cabinet government expressed opposition to Russia's meddling in North American affairs. The spokesman of Prime Minister Clayton's office even expressed his attitude on behalf of Clayton. Britain has major interests in North America, so we must protect the interests there. On the contrary, the Shah Empire has no territory in North America now, and it is wrong to interfere in North American affairs. Therefore, we, the British Empire, strongly request the Russian Empire to stop cooperating with the United States of America, and the Russian Empire should reduce the deterioration of relations with Britain. We also call on the United States of America to sit down and negotiate with the Confederate States of America. Only peace talks can allow the people of the United States of America to develop the economy with peace of mind, instead of living a life of war like now. The words of the spokesman of British Prime Minister Clayton let all countries know that Britain was not going to compromise, but instead wanted to dissuade Russia and the United States of America from continuing to oppose Britain. The United States of America naturally would not do so. On September 5, 1866, Secretary of State Seward of the United States responded to this in Washington, saying, "Now when we are talking with the Confederate States of the South from time to time, the United States of America opposes Britain's interference in the internal affairs of the Confederate States of America, and we do not agree with Britain's accusations. It is Britain that should reduce the war. After all, the war in recent years has made the economy of the British Isles worse and worse. London should make changes and return to the right path instead of continuing to make mistakes. The United States of America loves peace. We are based in North America, and our citizens come from the 5 oceans. We do not discriminate against any country, and our abolition of slavery is very thorough. On the contrary, London's national outlook has restricted the foreign policy of No. 10 Downing Street. We call on Prime Minister Clayton to understand this. Therefore, we will oppose Britain's England policy, including supporting the English regime in the South. Once again, I call on London to withdraw its troops from Richmond and prepare for the improvement of relations between the two countries. If the relationship between the two countries continues to deteriorate like this, then the United States of America reserves all the ability and means to fight back." The warning from the Secretary of State of the United States of America immediately condensed the atmosphere on both sides of the Atlantic. France watched the show, Italy was silent, Portugal was watching all this with a complicated mind, Spain was hesitant to speak, and finally remained silent, and Prussia watched the changes, obviously also watching the show. The Russian Empire and the United States of America frequently interacted with the United States of America in St. Petersburg and Washington. Obviously, this country still chose to stand on the side of the United States of America. Also, the Russian Empire seems to have recently carried out economic mutual assistance with the United States of America. The Russian Empire hopes that the United States of America will invest more in the Russian industry and help the Russian Empire develop industrialization. This is exactly the opposite direction that Britain has been implementing in recent years, in order to suppress the industrial strength of the Russian Empire. Obviously, the Russian Empire is no longer satisfied with the support provided by the Netherlands alone, and wants to take the opportunity to win over the United States of America to become a constraint on the Netherlands' monopoly of the Russian Empire. It seems that someone in St. Petersburg still has some opinions about the Netherlands. William IV said to Prime Minister Thorbecke in the office where the king received ministers, "No one thinks that Britain will compromise and bow its head, because if so, it will not be the British Empire." Thorbecke nodded and praised, "Your Majesty is right, but I think the Confederate States of America also knows this, so I am interested in the reasons why the Lincoln government did this." "What reason is there? It's nothing more than an excuse." As he said this, William IV winked at Mackay Sean next to him. Thorbecke's eyes moved, and he understood that the director of the Netherlands International Intelligence Agency must have new information. Mackay Sean told Thorbecke in detail about the secret actions of the United States of America. 30,000 Confederate States of America have secretly arrived in Spots, a northeastern city in Washington state. When Thorbecke saw Mackay Sean pointing to the map of North America on the wall, his eyes lit up. Mackay Sean continued, "In addition to these 30,000 people, there are also troops that have been transferred from the east in the name of supporting Utah in the south." Thorbecke reacted from his shock, and then looked at William IV, his eyes shining. "Is the Confederate States of America further resisting Britain?" William IV shook his head and smiled bitterly. "Wrong. The Lincoln government should be called a tooth for a tooth." Thorbecke was stunned, and thought about it. It was right to say so. "Mr. Prime Minister, I called you here this time just to see if the Netherlands can find any benefits from it." Hearing this, Thorbecke secretly said, "As expected, His Majesty's style has not changed in recent years, and he is still so snobbish, but this is exactly what he wants to see. After all, the competition between countries is based on profit first, otherwise why is there such a saying that it is beneficial to the country and the people?" So the Dutch monarch and ministers had a lot of ideas and started the deployment of the Netherlands for the next dark situation in North America. First, on September 10, 1866, the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs sent Venus, the Chief Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, to visit London to meet with British Foreign Secretary Russell on behalf of the Special Envoy of Foreign Minister Husband Vaughan, and would try to help cool down the conflict between Britain and the Confederate States of America in London. But London took a tough attitude and said that unless the United States of America made concessions, London would not bow first. The Netherlands seemed to be a messenger. On September 14, it sent Jerry Hunt, the second Deputy Minister of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, as a special envoy of Husband Vaughan, across the Atlantic to visit Washington, where it met with the country's Secretary of State Seward in charge of diplomacy. Jerry Hunt conveyed the attitude of Britain to Seward, and after stopping vomiting, the Cabinet Government of the United States of America held an emergency meeting. All countries were watching, with various attitudes, including expectation, disappointment, etc. After the meeting, the United States of America told Jerry Hunt that the United States of America did not accept the conditions set by the British. In fact, the Lincoln government seemed to be careless, and someone even published the British conditions to several major newspapers in the United States, such as the New York Times, the Washington Post, and the Chicago Times, so that these conditions fell into the hands of citizens of the United States of America. Although the Lincoln government announced that it would thoroughly investigate the leak and severely punish the other party, it did not deny the content of the leak, but instead wanted to investigate it thoroughly, which confirmed that this was true. Seeing the above conditions, the people of the United States of America gnashed their teeth, and it was simply infuriating. Chapter 274. Now, things are getting serious. The UK actually proposed reconciliation conditions with the United States. Most importantly, it was leaked and caused protests in the country. This is a big deal. Extra, extra, the New York Times has released major news. Please buy the New York Times if you want to buy a newspaper. It is true and reliable. Britain actually wants the United States to open its domestic market, so that British products can be dumped in the United States? For details, come and buy it. Britain actually asked us to reduce tariff rates. The latest information about the hateful British government's provocative conditions can be obtained from the Washington Post. You can learn what you want to know about the hateful conditions of Britain's humiliation of the United States. Oh my God, are the British crazy? They even want us to hand over the tax rights of the Port of New York and the Port of Boston to them for management. Do they really think we are still their colonies? The details in the Chicago Times will allow you to understand that the diplomatic smoke of the Atlantic is already dense. Not only that, in addition to discussing economic conditions, the British actually asked us to recognize the existence of the Confederacy. Isn't this just a free-for-all? It's too hateful. Everyone, please take a look at the North American History Daily, which records the scandals that must be mentioned in the history of the British. These newspapers in the United States of America stirred up the anger of the people of the United States of America, and it became a consensus to oppose the British. So a large-scale demonstration was staged in the United States of America. Thousands of people took to the streets in New York, Boston, Detroit, Cleveland, Salt Lake City, and even San Francisco in the West, demanding that the Lincoln government oppose Britain's bullying and all acts of losing power and humiliating the country with Britain. The Lincoln government came late at this time. After the White House spokesman condemned Britain's sky-high demands on behalf of Lincoln, the people of the country seemed disappointed that the Lincoln government did not respond positively to all the negotiations above, and said that they would continue to march until the Lincoln government cancelled the negotiations. This made London look at it. It was a bit unpleasant, especially when European countries and South American countries were watching the development of the situation. Britain seemed to feel like a clown on the stage, and people looked at it carefully. In response, Britain condemned the leak of secrets in the United States of America and demanded an explanation from the Lincoln government. In theory, the things negotiated by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs are generally not made public. After all, this is a matter of negotiation, and this is a common practice in the diplomatic community. However, now in the United States of America, this secret list drawn up by the British has become a household name, which makes London very angry. After all, opening high and buying low has always been a business practice, and the same is true in the diplomatic community. The same is true for negotiations between countries. When you put forward your own national conditions and are pushed down to a certain extent by the other party, you can pretend to be at a disadvantage and accept the signing. London originally thought that the Netherlands' visit to London meant that the United States of America was tired of fighting and wanted peace, so it tried to make peace with Britain. Therefore, Britain took the opportunity to propose that it had always wanted to gain benefits. Although it proposed a lot, it was also human nature. This is what most of the peers are doing. But what London did not expect was that the United States of America would actually have a leak, and it was all of it. When the content of North America was reprinted on the internet and newspapers in European countries, even many British people felt that the conditions proposed by the British Foreign Office were somewhat embarrassing. Many people can even understand the position of the United States of America. With the sign, the Clayton government was really anxious. If even the British felt sympathy for the United States, then it would be better to dissolve his government, not to mention that the Tories were eyeing the British Prime Minister's election in December. So the Clayton government began to fight back effectively. The public opinion in the United States could not be controlled, so the British government intended to use this to bring international public opinion to the diplomatic incident in which it condemned the United States. Yes, British newspapers such as the Times and the Financial Times, which had a certain influence in Europe, joined the war to guide Atlantic public opinion under the promotion of the Prime Minister's office at 10 Downing Street. The London Times and The Guardian, which have always been close to the Tories, wanted to sing the opposite tune, but were afraid that the Clayton government would give them a hard time, so they finally gave up. The United States, Washington, the House of Representatives. Secretary of State Seward, who was in charge of the United States of America's foreign policy, was looking at Jerry Hunt, the second deputy minister of the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and Al Gore, the Dutch ambassador to the United States of America, with a face full of dissatisfaction. Secretary of State Seward stared at the two with sharp eyes and said coldly, "Secretary Hunt, I think the Netherlands needs to explain everything that is happening in the United States of America." Seward looked at the two with dissatisfaction. He actually never had much good feelings towards the Netherlands. First, He was of German descent and came from Prussian immigrants. Second, many of the current policies of the Netherlands were actually what Seward had always wanted to do. For example, the issue of Pacific expansion, he began to plan and suggest it to Lincoln as early as 1861, when he just became Secretary of State. However, Lincoln's goal at that time was to abolish the agricultural plantation system and the abolition of slavery. He wanted to wait until he controlled the North and the South before allowing him to implement this plan. But before he had time to start, the Netherlands actually completed the occupation of the archipelago south of the Hawaiian Islands in the second year in less than a year, and even compromised with Britain in South Africa in exchange for Australia, an independent continent hanging overseas. This made Seward very envious and angry at the same time. How could the Netherlands have obtained so much territory, while the United States of America was still fighting for the unification of the country? What was even more hateful was that many people thought that the diplomatic leak of the negotiations between the United States of America and Britain was led by the United States, which was really unfair to them. After Lincoln and Seward's investigation, they found that the spearhead was actually pointed at the two people in front of the Netherlands, or in other words, from the beginning, the content of the negotiations obtained by the newspapers of the United States of America was actually leaked by the two people in front of them. Jerry Hunt and Al Gore looked at each other and exchanged glances. Jerry Hunter stood up and made a polite gesture, then he spoke in a calm and Dutch manner. "Dear Secretary of State, as I said when we just met, we in the Netherlands are very serious about our relationship with the United States of America. That's why when we saw the conditions offered by the United Kingdom, our entire Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs was very angry. Even my boss, His Excellency Husbert van, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, reported the matter to Prime Minister Thorbecke and even King William IV overnight. They all felt the same and expressed their dissatisfaction with the United Kingdom. You see, everything that is happening in the United States of America now is exactly how we felt at night." Chapter 275 The Forced Secretary of State. When Seward, the Secretary of State of the United States of America, heard this, he seemed to have really imagined that scene, and the anger on his face seemed to slowly fade away at this moment. This made Al Gore, the Dutch ambassador to the United States, admire him. Seward was indeed the person appointed by Lincoln as Secretary of State in 1861. It was indeed not a lie. His facial expression control had reached the level of perfection. At the same time, he looked at his boss, the second-ranked Deputy Minister of the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs in charge of American affairs. He also lived up to his statement and was the most good debater in the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He could say that the dead were alive, and he could also say that the living were dead. A leader is a leader. Al Gore felt that he had gained a lot of knowledge and learned a lot. So, the Netherlands did this for the good of our United States of America. Seward looked at Jerry Hunter with a smile and asked. Jerry Hunter smiled and said, "Is there any other country in the world that is as close to the United States as the Netherlands and the Russian Empire? Why would they tie the Russian Empire to the Netherlands?" Seward secretly praised the other party for talking nonsense, but at the same time he did not dare to deny that the Netherlands was currently one of the closest allies of the United States, although he knew that the Netherlands' goal was definitely not pure. So he pretended to be distressed and said, "That's right. The Netherlands is a good friend of the United States. But because of this, you two have also seen our current predicament. I wonder if you two realize that what you have done has caused major turmoil in our country. The relationship with Britain has entered a more turbulent cliff. It may enter a war at any time. The Netherlands is pushing us to the brink of a war with Britain." Al Gore knew that the United States had dispatched troops to the northwest border of the United States and Canada. This was the information Jerry Hunter told him before. Although he didn't know the source of this information, he even knew from Jerry Hunter that the other party was the same as him. Obviously, both of them realized that the Netherlands had informants in the United States. It's just that they didn't know who it was, but they also understood what they should know and what they shouldn't know. They naturally understood this principle. However, this did not prevent them from trusting the authenticity and validity of the source of this information. Therefore, when Al Gore saw Seward acting so contrived, he sighed again in his heart. Sure enough, no one who can be a senior diplomat is simple, especially the thick-skinned. Dutch Deputy Minister Jerry Hunt is naturally not an easy person to deal with. You know, in the Netherlands, when the Prime Minister forms a new cabinet government, all cabinet members need to be approved by 2/3 of the members of the Dutch Senate, and then they must obtain the signature and approval of the King of the Netherlands before they can take effect. Therefore, every cabinet member is almost popular. Even when the two parties have almost the same number of members in the Senate, the Prime Minister can only make a deal. The Prime Minister nominates the opposition members to obtain the cabinet member position that is in line with the interests of both parties, and then obtains the support of the opposition party to form a successful and complete cabinet government. It is precisely because of this that many national cabinet prime ministers try to avoid a scene as much as possible, and the corresponding Senate has more seats, but many things are beyond their control, and in the end they can only bow to the opposition. Just like the deceased British Prime Minister Palmerston, in 1830, he became the foreign minister of the Tory cabinet because he was the manager of the opposition, and then he gradually achieved his fame. This is signed and effective. In fact, the Netherlands now has no deputy ministers in the cabinet. Due to the strength of William IV, the cabinet government led by Prime Minister Talbeck and the military led by Chief of Staff Mark Rudd will consult William IV before promoting the level of their deputy ministers. They will only be promoted after obtaining approval. This means that Jerry Hunt, the second deputy foreign minister of the Netherlands, is also a person who has caught the eye of William IV. Will the person recognized by William IV be simple? He believes that no one in Europe will agree with him now. Jerry Hunter still had a neutral expression, but he remained a gentleman. He glanced at Seward first, then said with a smile in his eyes, "Naturally, the Netherlands will not harm our good friend, the United States of America." Seeing Seward waiting for his next words, Jerry Hunter said, "We will only help you. After all, the United States of America has already deployed tens of thousands of troops to Washington State. If we, the Netherlands, as good friends, do not make some anti-British excuses for you, how can you suppress the British in the righteousness?" "Right, respected Secretary of State." What does he mean?" Seward's face changed drastically, and he looked at Jerry Hunter in shock, but his face was very calm afterwards, as if what he just said was not what he said. Seward's thousands of thoughts turned in an instant, and he stared at Jerry Hunter. The other party looked back at him from beginning to end, without any fear, as calm as always. The second deputy minister and the third person in charge of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Netherlands is like this. I guess the other people with the same position as him are not easy to deal with. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but sigh that he lacked talent. At this time, he knew that the Netherlands must have noticed something, and looking at the appearance of the two people in front of him, he knew the next move of the United States of America. In the end, the Secretary of State of the United States of America, who had always been anti-Dutch, compromised, because he knew that the next step was the beginning of a tough battle of diplomatic negotiations. On September 20, 1866, Jerry Hunt, Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Netherlands, held a joint press conference in Washington, United States of America on behalf of Hijsbert van, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, and Seward, Secretary of State of the United States of America. The two countries expressed their commitment to cooperate in Atlantic security. The United States of America will increase its purchase of Dutch weapons by 50% within the next 5 years on the original basis. At the same time, the two countries also announced that they will conduct more economic exchanges on both sides of the Pacific. The Netherlands focuses on the eastern coast of Australia, supplemented by New Guinea and the East Indies, and fully connects with the western Pacific coast of the United States. The two countries will create economic links for this and jointly promote economic development. This is obviously what the Dutch government and the Lincoln government want, and what William IV and Seward want. Both are full of expectations for the development there. Just when many people were careless about this, they later realized that the big head was still behind. The Netherlands actually agreed to the United States Federal States application to purchase a steam-class battleship, and even sold 5 ships. The amount of a first-class steam battleship is more than £300,000. The United States Federal State actually ordered 5 ships at one time. The Williams Shipbuilding Company under the William Group of the Kingdom of the Netherlands is ready to deliver one every 3 years, £1.5 million in 15 years, an average of £100,000 per year, plus after-sales maintenance and replacement of parts. For many small countries, it is an astronomical data. It can be imagined that the Dutch William Group accounts for the majority, and the parts and munition suppliers must be celebrating with champagne. These people don't care about the humanitarian crisis caused by the war. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.